Hey everyone, it's Josh Turner, Paranormal Roundtable, coming to you live from Austin, Texas, as always. We just had the Austin city limits in town, and of course, as always, it was a big pile of crap. Not to bag on it, but, you know, it's pretty much what it is. Sorry for getting in so late. I've been entertaining guests and hanging out, doing stuff. Was at the mall earlier, just having fun, and just got a little bit late here getting in the studio. This camera's a little bit, I don't like the angle here. There we go. You're down a little bit. You put it down a little bit. There you go. Thank you. So what we're doing tonight, can everybody hear me? First of all, make sure you can hear me. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight. I have a guest in the studio tonight. And so most of you know him. We just finished doing a project together. We did 24 episodes. And we haven't even done them all yet. We haven't released Ron Murphy or Patrick Meekin's episodes yet, but that's coming. We already have a bunch of episodes out, so you guys can watch and you know, you have something to do. So anybody complains and says, "Hey, you know what? You know, there's none of these hour-long episodes, whatever. We just got 16, I think. We got about what? How many did we drop? 20? I know, 18. Yeah. We dropped 18, and we got, I think, 6 more to go. And we interviewed Kumbo Baker, Chad Lewis, Abe Seas, Jessica Jones, Jesus Payan, or Jesus Payan, depending on, you know. But we need the moderators. You want to put the group thing on there and tell them to moderate? Yes. Send a text out. I got it right here. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to let you guys ask some questions in the chat of me. You want to say hello, Barton? You want to introduce Barton to everybody? There you are.
Let's go ahead and move this down, Barton.
Get that microphone set up there.
Yeah. Hello, paratroopers. Hope everybody's doing great tonight. So this is me, Barton Nunnelly. That's about all I can say.
And we got Mushu here tonight, too.
The one and only.
The camera doesn't move over there, huh?
Oh, no, there's no camera on me, unfortunately.
Oh. So he's just going to have him speaking with we can't look at him.
I'm the shadowy figure.
It's fine with me. We don't want to have to see him on the camera along with seeing him. And it's pretty funny. But anyway. Okay. So we got everybody ready. Everything's going here. I wanted to start off something real quick here. Since you've been in town, what do you think? What are your thoughts on Austin and what's going on?
All I can say is, wow, man, it's crazy down here. Appreciate you having us down here too, Wolf, and you've been giving us the full Austin experience for sure. Especially last night was kind of crazy, but yeah, we love it. It's the first time I've been in a real big city like this. I've never seen buildings this tall, and it's really great.
Austin is a very large city. Very large city. And people what they don't realize is that I think we're like the 9th largest city now, and it's insane. And there is a strong criminal element here that I think people did not realize. And anyways,
we met some last night.
We had some extracurricular activity going on last night. Was I wrong? I told you.
No, he was right.
Things happen,
yeah. And they did happen.
Yeah, people like to think that I'm over here.
Crime last night, you and I, right?
We really did.
No joke.
I'm not going to get into details, but I mean, do you want to say something, Barton, about last night?
Well, yeah, we basically interrupted
theft.
Some thieves stealing a bunch of stuff from one of your job sites, and we had to stop them from doing that, of course. And
a couple of vagrants doing some nefarious activities.
They weren't vagrants. They were pretty...
Yeah, Wolf stopped them, and I almost got ran over by the guy driving the getaway van, and so yeah, everything turned out.
They were a lot more organized than vagrants. They weren't homeless people.
Right.
They had it set up. I could tell that somebody had screwed up, and that gate was open. You know.
Right.
and it was
Came
it
in through
was
the back gate.
yeah, it was came through the back gate. It was very hairy for a minute there, and we did get into it, and so all's well that ends well. Nellie got a giant rock of gravel thrown at her head, thrown toward her. It was pretty. Letitia and Nellie got out, and Anthony got out, and yeah, it was pretty. It got bad. But that happens. It happens.
I have a new respect for you and your job. I know you got. I hear you talk about it on YouTube all the time and how stressful your job is, and you're really not exaggerating one bit. It's really stressful and really dangerous as well. So, yeah, thanks for letting me ride around with you last night and show me how it is down here in Austin.
Yeah,
thank you. I was going to say thank you, Mr. T, for the $99.
Yes, thank you for that donation. That's incredible. Thank you so much. The thing about it is, people don't realize that Austin. That when they think of Austin, they think of like Portland, or they think of like these other liberal cities like Seattle. And like you said, the crime is not. This is still Texas, and all the major cities in Texas still have this sort of element to them. And Austin has just it's grown really fast. There's this large influx of Chicagonites or Chicagoites or whatever you want to call them, and then people from the Southeast, and then people from Mexico, of course, and then a lot of people from California. And everybody's trying to learn how to live together, and it's not working. For the most part, there's been a lot of violence. Last night, there was a big concert that went down, and my friend Deuce was involved in an altercation. And he's okay. I just saw it on Facebook. I was just reading because I've been busy all day on doing things with friends and stuff. And I just saw it, and I was just like, holy crap! He almost got hurt. There was a bunch of people that got hurt in a big altercation, either last night or Sunday. I didn't even get to read it all. Deuce is a boxing coach here in Austin, and he used to be Tony. You and Anthony's boxing coach.
Yeah, and Zane. He trained there for a little bit.
Before you guys switched over to Black Sheep. I'm going to take you to Black Sheep later, Barton, so you can get a look at the gym over there. He hasn't got a chance to see the boxing gym yet. Shout out to the folks at Black Sheep, all the guys that fight out of there. Jeff Meadows, Allison Wood, the owners, and then of course the coaches, Josh Scales, Max Williams. So Austin is a very large place, and Barton, you were surprised.
Oh wow.
How big it is.
It seems like you could fit the whole state of Kentucky down into just Austin.
It takes you forever to get from one side to the other.
Right.
It's large land-wise. I mean, the traffic is bad. And so Barton, last night we were driving around, and I was showing them. You guys came in on Sunday night, late Sunday night, and you saw a little bit. And I took you down to the food trucks, and then we went out last night and we showed them we went to San Marcos, and then we ate dinner at Alpine Haus at the German restaurant. And we came back, went for a ride, and we showed you a bunch of stuff. Middle of the night, Barton was shocked. It was 1 a.m. and there was a concert going on.
Right
there on 2nd Street.
Stores were all open. People were eating, singing,
he was like,
dancing.
This city never sleeps.
It's like an insomniac's dream right here.
In actuality, it's actually had more of a bedtime now than it actually used to in the past. They used to really have stay up a lot later.
24/7. COVID killed a lot of the 24/7 vibe.
Wow.
But like you saw, there's still a lot of people that are up all night out running around.
Lots of things to do here. It was the first time I've ever seen homeless people sleeping right out on the sidewalk,
right on
and
the street,
hookers standing on the corner, plying their trade. And I've never seen that before. And it was
thugs everywhere. You drive by, you see the people dealing the drugs out in the open, and you're just like, it is insane. It's crazy. And then these people have voted to not have a police force, so you have a small police force, and so a lot of stuff gets swept out or whatever. Beast Titan, I don't know what to think of you sometimes, because I don't know if you're joking or if you're being serious. You call me Scott Turner. That's not my name. So let's quit playing around. My name. So I don't know why you're always calling me Scott and talking about how handsome I am. I know you're being silly or whatever. But let's get my name correct.
Well, you got half of it right.
It's
You're a
Joseph.
very handsome guy.
Joseph. One of my teachers called me Joseph through half of third grade. I was like, why are you calling me? Oh, she was a very old lady, though, too, but she was my reading teacher. She's like, Joseph. And I was like, that's not my name. Okay, Joseph. She did not get it. And I was like, okay. And Joseph, I just kind of accepted it. And even some of the kids that I went to school with would write out my Valentine, they're Joseph. And I was like, wow. Oh, well, my mom wrote that. That's great. Well, that's not my name. But if anybody wants to ask Barton any questions, we got him in the studio right here, and we just did the shows, and we got, like I said, we got about 6 to 8 more we're dropping. I don't think we dropped the haunted cemeteries yet. Alec, you were involved in that. Did we drop haunted cemeteries yet?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we can ask Anthony, but I guess he wandered off to go find White Claw. So I guess that's not going to happen. So if anybody has any questions for Barton while we're here together, let's get them out. If anybody has listened to any of the episodes and you have anything to talk about, I have had a few people ask me about the ACS episodes. They were really interested in that because there was a lot of things that he said on there that were very and like I told people, he was very poignant when he was on the show. It was a little bit sad. There were things that I didn't know. That me and Barton, when we interviewed him, it was kind of it was eye-opening, especially about him being like a child and being left with a what he said was a curandera. It was more like a bruja, and that and so anyways, it was very weird because he was left there with this witch so that she would heal his brother. And he was like I don't know what you would call it. Like, I don't know if she used him as like a conduit for energy because he was a little boy, like a little, what do you say, 3 or 4 years old or something like that. And so he watched her take demons off of people and out of people. And so it was just a really weird thing. So I had a few people hit me up recently asking me about that, and the Kumbo Baker or somebody saying Kumbo's shows were awesome. Thank you, Josh and Barton. Kumbo had a lot to say. There was a point, I want to get into this just for a minute, where Kumbo talked about a lot of different things that didn't make the cut into the show because we kind of deviated from the paranormal. And I know you guys tune in to hear the paranormal, so we started talking about Africa, and then we got into Guatemala, and we talked about that part might have got cut out, but we talked about the cortacabezas, which are the head cutters of these birds. But while he was talking about Africa, it was just about a war zone that he went to as a missionary, and then it was like after the show, then Kumbo starts talking about the Mukila Mbembe and the people that were refugees who had seen it in the Congo, and me and Barton were like, why didn't you say this during the show?
Well, you know what? This seems like a perfect time to bring him onto a show maybe in the future on the live stream and, get into depth about this.
Right, and then ask him to talk about the Mukila Mbembe because he said these people were drawing pictures of it and giving in.
So Tim and I talked, I don't know if you know this or not, but we talked for like another hour and a half after you hung up. So, yeah, he was giving out some good information, and I think a lot of the shows were eye-opening, if not, most or not, or all of them were eye-opening. Like Daryl Denton, he had a lot of cool stuff to say about Bigfoot and its association with all the other unexplained phenomena that people experience after they see Bigfoot. And Bigfoot in Michigan, Rob, Jessica Jones, all really, really good shows, and I hope you guys will take the time and listen to those.
Yeah, and the thing is, like when we're talking about Kumbo, I think all of these people, we talked a lot like off camera too. I mean, off air.
Right.
We didn't record a lot of it, but it was weird because we started off with Jessica Jones. I was on her show, and then we just said, "Hey," I said, "Why don't we just do the recording tonight with Jessica?" So I texted you and said, "Hey, let's just go ahead and do it."
Worked out really good.
And we did it, and then it was just like a continuation of what we talked about on her show, what I talked about. And it was good. It was awesome. And one of the things that really got me about Jessica was how accurate she was with some of the things that she's remote viewed.
Yeah.
But people were kind of hard on her. I heard that I haven't looked, but the comment section I was told the comment section was kind of brutal. But there are some people that show up to leave really negative comments on there. And what these people do is one bad person will leave like a bunch of comments, whereas a good person just leaves like one, because that's what normal sane people do.
Right.
But insane people leave like a bunch of bad comments, and then they're just like, oh yeah, you're a piece of crap and blah blah blah. And you know, you're never going to shake it completely, but there's this misconception I think about me that that I give a crap, and that is completely not true. I really don't give a crap.
Right. I mean, that's the way you have to be. You can't sit up here and talk about your truths because a lot of people don't understand what you're talking about, and they don't have their own experiences to back them up and to really give them that sort of logic, you know. So, but you can't really worry about what people say. As long as you tell the truth, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and you know, at the end of the day, that's all you need is that knowledge that you've done what you can. So you can sleep easy no matter what all the naysayers want to type in some chat, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is too, I think what we got in this community is a lot of egos without any kind of substance.
Right. Yes.
And there's all these people talking about, oh, Josh Turner, you're arrogant, you're blah blah blah, blah 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 blah, you know. So what? I mean, you know, you're swaggering around, blah blah blah. Well, you have something to swagger about.
Right.
I mean,
you do a great job, and as far as I'm concerned, you're the greatest of all time. So you have the right to be a little arrogant.
Well,
sometimes. So
I've spoken about this before. Is the people are mistaking confidence for arrogance. Confidence is when you have something to show, and you're showing because you actually have substance. People are confusing it because they don't think you have anything, so they're calling you arrogant, and you know they're incorrect. That's all it is.
they are.
yeah. Well, what happened at the mall today, Barton?
So we ran into. I couldn't believe it actually. We walk into the mall and there's these two guys standing there, and one of them says, "Josh Turner." And we walk up to him, and I'm like, I've seen this guy's face before, but I really can't place just where I've seen it. And he was actually Dante Peters.
Yeah, Peter Dante.
Peter Dante. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, the one that's on all the Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of movies. Like I got a list. Like I think it's like
Right. So my favorite's the Waterboy, and I should have immediately recognized him, you know. But you know, everybody's 30 years older now, so
yeah.
but he's a really great guy. And just happened to bump into him, and he's a fan of yours, Wolf.
Yeah,
So
it was.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was crazy because like we're walking, and I saw him raise his arm up, and I thought like, who's this guy? And
Right.
he kind of yelled from across the mall when I was walking, and it was just like surreal because and then when we got up to him, he says, "I know you,"
Yeah.
and when I looked at Peter, I was like, I recognized him, but I didn't. I just remembered Dante, his name Dante, and I said,
Right.
"You're Dante," and he goes, "Yeah, I've DM'd you," and I was like, "You did?" And I was like, because I thought he was messing with me, and I said, "What's my name?" He said, "He's Josh Turner," and he pointed at your shirt, and he said,
Yeah.
"Paranormal Roundtable,"
Yeah, he's
and I said,
really
"That's
a
pretty
fan.
cool." So then we hung out with him. I mean,
Yeah.
and his buddy is that's in the pictures we put on Facebook. He's wearing Dallas Cowboys shirts. We started talking. And you know, we're talking about the Cowboys, and then you and him were talking about music because he's
Right,
he's
he's a
an
musician,
artist.
yeah.
What's his name? I don't know his name.
He told me his name, brother.
He's in a band. He's in a contemporary band. And,
Yeah, he
and,
wants to write some songs together. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's going to be fun.
And Dante was like introducing me, whatever, and he was talking to me. He was like, "This guy's got a cool show," and I was like, "I can't believe because when he had direct messaged me, I thought it was somebody playing games."
Yeah,
And so, because I get that sometimes, like somebody the other day was like, "Oh, this is Kevin Durant." And I'm like, "Is it really Kevin Durant?" And then they said, "Okay, this and that." Oh, okay. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't,
Yeah.
you know. And so I didn't know if that was him because
Right,
you never
most
know
people,
who.
people can be who they want to be on the internet. Right?
Yeah.
They don't.
So you don't know who really who watches your show and who doesn't, you know. And so I got a country singer who's actually given us a story, and he's pretty famous, you know, but he doesn't want to be known as a kook or whatever, you know. So when you give the story, you can't say, "Hey, this is so and so,"
Right.
but you know who it is. And so yeah, it was just interesting. And so we talked, and he had been drinking a little bit. Peter had been drinking a little bit, and so
Yeah.
he was like,
He was
"I'll come
real
up to the
friendly.
studio and we'll hang out tonight." And I said, "Well, you come on the show. I mean, but you know, we talk about the paranormal, and so I don't know if he was going to be He's real outgoing, and jovial. And I was like, I just didn't want him to come on the show, and then, it'd be something that's not, palatable because,
Right. To your audience,
because Peter's a nice guy, but he
He is.
but we'd have to talk first, some more because, like I said, when he turned around when we finally were leaving, and he said, "Hey, I direct messaged you," and so I was like, "Okay," but I don't know, I didn't know that was really you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could have been somebody else just saying that, and so that was cool though, and we got to hang out with him, and he was real. It was real fun. We had a fun
Had a great
time. And so, and Barton got to meet a bunch of my people.
Right, all great people.
Mm-hmm.
I've met just about all of them, and think the world of every one of them that I've met. So yeah, Mushu and Anthony and Alec, they're all great people. D,
I am pretty great.
Scorpion, yeah, you are.
I think. I don't know if you move it that way. I don't know if you move that way, then you can be in the camera more.
It seems like it might be a little tight, but we could try it.
You can try it. Let's. There we go. Now you can move your little weird self next to him, Tony.
Like the chairs don't really fit together.
Yeah, they don't really, because we got the camera set up now, and I don't want to squish y'all in, but thanks to Alec and Anthony for doing a great job. They went all over the place trying to get things done so we could get this
set up.
And sorry it took so long because by the time we got to the studio, we had been running around all day. And we are going. Ken Gerhardt's coming into town on Thursday, and that's his birthday. We're going to celebrate Ken's birthday. And then we're all going to go to the Bigfoot conference in Jefferson, which I'm honestly, I'm excited to go, but I'm not because I got a lot to do here. So it's kind of hard for me to take off. So I'm going to have to do a lot of maneuvering so I can get that done. If anybody wants to go and meet us down at the Bigfoot conference in Jefferson, Texas, we'd love to have you. We have the new shirts. If anybody wants to take a look at the Inhumanoid shirt and what it looks like, can you grab one, Anthony, and grab the hats for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month? And then
It's gonna be a fun time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can talk a little bit of Bigfoot here and some other stuff. If anybody has any questions for Barton, pose them in the chat. Because Barton, and like I said, Barton is going to be here all week. But you're writing a book about the Spotsville monster,
Right.
and I wanted to get into that today on the live chat a little bit. Now we've talked about that before, but I would like you to have you sitting in the. This is the shirt. You see that? Now this was the second. Wasn't this the second run print of what the cover of the book looks like?
Right.
That's
the first
the
was sold out at the conference at the.
It
Dogman
did. It
conference in
sold out
August.
quick. I mean, these shirts sold out quick. So we're taking these down to the conference in Jefferson at Craig Woolheater's shindig. This is the pink hat for breast cancer awareness. I like to wear my breast cancer hat like this because that's just how I roll. But this is the hat right here, folks. And it's got the leather. It's made of leather right here. And these, we're going to be giving them away. We're going to sell a few of these probably at the conference, but we're going to be giving them away. And so, yeah, we're going to pick some people tonight to be winners of these hats. And you will have to wait, though, until I come back from the conference to get it shipped out. But once I come back, it'll be done. We'll get it done. So anyway, that's the hat for breast
Really
cancer
nice.
awareness. So the Grandma's Boy. That's the Peter Dante was in Grandma's Boy, Water Boy, Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds,
Happy Gilmore.
just wedding singer.
Basically every Adam
Grown-ups
Sandler
too.
movie out
Yeah,
there.
he's always with Adam Sandler,
Right.
and he's like a comedian. He likes to sing. He started bellowing out songs in the middle of the mall, which was funny. And then some of my friends that worked there, they were like, "Hey man, that guy's crazy, man." And I was like, "He's funny." And they're like, "Is he your friend?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's my friend." And so it was funny because they were asking me if he was my friend, and I was like, "He's like a actor that's been in like 26 major motion pictures."
Right.
And so it was kind of surreal. It was like we're just walking along, and this guy,
And there's a guy from the Waterboy.
From The Waterboy, and then he gives-
of all time, right?
I was gonna say Grandma's Boy.
Grandma's Boy and
That
Waterboy,
video
and then-
game was something that I've always wanted to play, and they never even came out with it.
yeah, I think it's funny because hold on one second, let me get this done here. You just don't know who's listening. You never
Right.
know who's listening and who's I just was shocked, like I couldn't believe it's crazy. But and I felt kind of awkward at first because I didn't recognize him right off the crack of the bat.
Right, well, I knew I'd seen him before, and I thought, well, I should know who this guy is. But, like I say, we're all 30 years older than he was when I first saw him on that show. So, yeah, it was just crazy that we walked into that guy.
when we left from hanging out with him, when we were leaving the mall, and Barton goes, "I can't believe the guy from Waterboy just gave me a hug," or he said, "Kiss my neck,"
he
or
kissed my
something.
neck. Yeah.
Like,
And I'm like, well, he must have had a few drinks. He gave me a kiss and everything. If I knew he was the guy from Waterboy, I might have kissed him back.
Well, he
I
said
don't know.
Nelly. Like he said Nelly, which was funny because I was like, my wife, and he's like, "Where's she at? Where's Nelly?"
Yeah.
And so we were like, "That's crazy." So when she came up and she was like, "Hey," and then they took pictures together, and she recognized immediately, knew who he was, and
Yeah.
it was cool, So and we exchanged numbers, and they're gonna be in town for a few days, so maybe we'll do something with them tomorrow. But so tonight, what we got going on, like I said, I wanted to have Barton in the studio, and we could talk about the episodes that we just dropped. You can ask questions about the paranormal. Get our opinions on anything you want to get our opinions on. Maybe we can get some.
You should just ask the questions if you don't mind. Somebody comes up with a question.
Yeah.
I'll keep an eye on it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and so if anybody wants to get
happy
something,
to answer them for them.
let's see what they got in the questions here. Can I get my glasses too? Somebody, please. And Scorpion, I think it says, which character did he play in Waterboy? He was the bad
Quarterback.
guy. The
Yeah, he
quarterback
was the
guy.
butthole that always
Yeah, he was the jerk or
yeah.
whatever. That whatever.
Yeah. Played a real good bad guy in it.
Yeah. He always talks
Not
like
really a
this,
bad guy,
but he
but
talks
yeah.
like that in real life. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
like he's faking it or anything. That's just how he talks, and he was cracking me up though at the mall. I know he was making some of the people there nervous, but I thought it was funny. But I'm used to those kind of people.
Funny.
He's a comedian. That's what he does,
Yeah, let me just take a second here, Wolf, to plug my YouTube channel, if you don't mind, brother. I got a YouTube channel called Inhumanoids with Barton Nunnelly. It's brand new, just 2 or 3 weeks old. So if you're looking for some more Inhumanoids content, be sure and subscribe to that one too. I think we're doing a pretty good job. We're getting better as we go. We still got a long way to go.
You just hit over 1,000.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool.
Matt Keene says, "What do you think about near-death experiences involving hell?" That's a hard one because actually it's funny that you sent me a story about that recently, Matt, and it wasn't lost on me. I actually have thought about that, and just recently I thought about it because I had another person who had sent me something about being in hell and having a near-death experience, and they went to hell. And so it's funny that you sent me one just like a couple days ago, Matt. And I, like I said, I read part of it. I've been so busy. I haven't had a chance. Barton can attest to how busy I am with my job.
Yeah, wow.
There is no moment that I get to just rest on my laurels. I have to keep going, moving, doing stuff.
Non-stop.
And
all
it
day,
is
all night.
like a miracle from God that I'm able to sit up here and do the show every week. What little time I have extra, I have to be dealing with the show, trying to get stories and things like that, trying to read stories. This week I haven't had much time to do that with Barton in town and with him and Letitia. But I can say this, there is enough evidence to say that hell exists.
Me too.
There are people who like to say hell doesn't exist, that it's not a real thing. I can tell you right now, it absolutely is a real thing. Heaven is too. What I like to tell people though is you shouldn't do good or try to be a righteous person for the sake of getting to heaven, as a reward, to go to heaven, or to avoid a punishment of going to hell. Because if you're doing that, and you're only doing good for that purpose, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not on the right side of things.
Right, and you can't get to heaven that way anyway. So works without faith is dead, and faith without works is dead. That's what the good book says. So
Yeah.
you can't just do good all your life and expect to get into heaven on your those merits. You know, you have to do something else.
Yeah, and also you can't do good works and just like I said, you're doing it because you're working toward a reward, for some heavenly reward, and then to avoid some afterlife punishment. I have a friend who was telling me the other day about how when he goes to heaven, he goes, you can have whatever you want. You can, if you wanted a palace made of a chocolate cake, you could have that. And I was like, I'm talking about Stefan.
Yeah.
I'll be real honest. Stefan's probably listening too. And I was like, Stefan, that's not, I don't do anything for the thought of, oh, I'm going to avoid a punishment or I need to go to heaven. That's not.
That's so funny though, that the idea of heaven being that you get everything. I always thought of it like
You don't care about the earthly.
that you don't
why
care
would you
any-
care
why
about
would
the,
you
all that
want
falls
any of that
away,
stuff?
dude.
Like you finally are free from all that want and need of
Right.
all that needless material that you don't really care or need in the that you need now. And I was gonna say, someone asked the question: any reports coming out of Florida post Ian?
Yeah, I've heard of alligators being in people's houses.
Mm.
I mean, I
Anything-
saw
Sharks
pictures
swimming
of
down the street.
sharks swimming down
Yeah.
the street. It was
Yeah.
pretty crazy. I saw the videos. I'm sure you saw them too.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I didn't really. I haven't seen anything.
Paranormal.
Yeah, nothing paranormal
Yeah,
that I've heard
of
yet. I'm
anything
sure I will
paranormal.
eventually.
Samantha Phillip has a question for you here, Barton.
Okay.
Have you had any positive or heard of any positive Inhumanoid experiences, or were they all bad? The stories about your family being terrorized are horrible, and I send you love and healing for that.
Oh, well, thanks. I really appreciate that. No, as far as me personally, I have no experiences at all, positive wise with Inhumanoids. They've all been negative. I've heard, of course, of a lot of people who think these things are their friends and they gift them and all this stuff. But personally, no positive experiences at all. And I don't want to have any more, really. It'd be just fine with me if I never had another Inhumanoid experience. I'm looking for one more down at LBL, but other than that, that's about it.
Yeah. Matt Keen, thank you for the donation. I appreciate everything that you and Barton both have done for me and the time you've given me. I posted the video in Barton's group. Thank you
Right.
for
Yes.
that.
Thanks for that, Matt.
Let me see if there's anything else here while we wait for Wolf to come back.
What I think about near-death experiences involving hell is you better listen because it's real, and you better listen to people who know. It's hard to believe some things, I know, but if you're hearing some good information coming from someone that you know and trust, and is not a liar, and not a pretender, then you should go ahead and take that advice and listen.
Yeah. I also think heaven and hell aren't exactly what people imagine. And I think that you can't really imagine it.
Right?
Like it's outside of your imagination. It's a
Yes.
different kind of experience. And that's
Yes.
why the idea of it should be just, either
Right.
extremely pleasing or extremely terrifying.
Yeah. I agree.
Michelle G asked here, have you had any ghost experiences?
Oh my goodness, yes. And I didn't like any of them. I hope I never have another one. Ghosts, I have to say, I would rather face Dogman with a sword and spear than go into a single haunted room. So yes, I've lived in 3 haunted houses, have lots of ghost experiences, and don't want to repeat any of those. It's just they just scare me. I'm not too macho to admit that I'm scared of ghosts because I am, and I don't want anything to do with any of them.
Thank you, Dumpster Diving Dogman, for the $20 donation. I'm all the beautiful people and peaceful people. There you go. What the hell are Joe and I here sitting? Oh, this is from,
It's from Jenny,
yeah.
I presume.
Question: what the hell are Joe and I hearing sitting in your back patio? Dogs are going bonkers, then gunshots, then dogs going silent.
Well, there's no telling out there in Basket what you're hearing, Jenny. So every night, about 10 o'clock, the coyotes start howling. Gunshots you can pretty much hear those 24/7 out there in Basket, Kentucky. As far as the screaming goes, If it's not a coyote, I don't know what it is. So, Joe, get your gun handy, buddy.
Thank you, Fat Sasquatch, for the $20 donation.
Now, we do have panthers out there, too. So, when panthers scream, they sound just like a woman screaming in pain. And so that you have to keep that in mind. It could be a panther.
There's actually an animal called it's like a little weasel, I think. It's called a fisher cat,
Yeah.
which if you haven't heard one of those scream, you can find videos of it on YouTube. But when they make the noises they make, it's like it's a blood curdling. It sounds like a human woman screaming at the top of her lungs. It's unsettling. So I mean, you can hear that in the woods, and it might be like the most disturbing thing you've ever heard, but it's a fisher cat.
Right. And also, a lot of animals make really startling noises. Foxes, for example. If you've never heard a fox scream, I suggest you go Google that one because it's really, it doesn't sound like it's coming from a small animal like that, but it's really nerve-wracking to listen to that. So don't tell them what they're hearing out there.
Yeah, nature is quite terrifying.
It is, yeah.
Once the lights are off and you're out by
Right,
yourself,
you can't
and
see anything. You don't know what's out there.
you don't know
looking
where
at
it's
you.
coming from.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, John, for the $10 donation.
But I hope it was something normal and natural, Jenny, and not some inhumanoid screaming out there in the darkness. So hope you guys will be all right. And we really appreciate you come house sitting for us while we're down in Austin. You guys are the best.
We got a guy, I believe his name is pronounced Deimos Mars, saying, "What exactly are black panthers? Are they some sort of creatures like Dogman that can shift from all fours to two, or no?"
I don't think so. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
3 black panthers in my life. 2 have been in broad daylight, and they look like normal animals to me.
Yeah.
So I just think that they're something that's there that the officials refuse to acknowledge or don't want to not acknowledge for some reason, whatever reason. But I think they're natural animals. I saw one chased up out of this dry creek bed by this wolf-like animal. I still don't have any clue what it was. It was just a big animal, looked like a wolf. It had a big, long, bushy tail. So,
Well, funny enough, Matt Keen here asks, could they be something else because they've only been described as jaguars?
Yeah, I think the term Black Panther is actually
Yeah,
a
it's a
misnomer
catch-all.
because they're
that's what
yeah,
I've.
it's a
they're
catch-all.
actually a different
that's what I thought too.
type of large cat, and technically they're not solid black. It's just that their pattern is so dark that they look completely black.
Yeah, once you see them up close, they're definitely
Yeah.
spotted.
Yeah, the last one I saw in broad daylight had the spots to it. It looked more like a jaguar, but the first one I saw was definitely solid black because it ran out in front of the headlights of our car when we was coming home in Spotsville back in 1971. So yeah, and its eyes showed red in the headlights. So yeah, take that for whatever it's worth, but that's what happened.
Yeah, I'm back. So I have a really quick story I was going to tell. Okay, this one was one I was going to talk to you about, Barton. We haven't had a chance. We've been so busy the last couple of days.
Right.
So we ate at that restaurant, the Alpine Haus. Okay, and
Yeah.
that place is haunted. And I've had some experiences there. Twice, I've had experiences in that hallway where the restroom is, where somebody was trying to, like one time I was in the restroom there, and somebody was trying to open the door. So I was right there washing my hands. I just opened the door and there was nobody there.
Wow.
So it's just like somebody was like on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
And then another time I walked by the table right when you're walking out of that hallway where the restroom's at, right there to the right. I thought there was a couple people sitting there. And I said, "Excuse me." And I looked down, there was nobody there. And then, of course, Tony and Anthony, they can both attest that we were told by the owner that is the haunted table.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so that table, we had some weird stuff happen. Now, one night, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago, we walked out of, no, it was 3 or 4 months ago. It was before the conference. We walked out, and one of the cooks was outside, and he was looking up, and him and my wife and Tony were looking at what looks like a UFO, like up in the sky, and I look up, and then it just goes, and it was gone. And I was like, whoa.
Right.
Yeah, right there
Wow.
over the Alpine Haus. It was just a weird it's a really weird thing. And I know, Tony, you've been to Green,
Mm-hmm.
in the Green Hall.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it.
Beautiful place. I would like to take you guys if we have time.
Sure.
But it's haunted. And then that area, though, if you take that Riverfront Drive, it takes you on the peripheral of Dogman territory where we've had a lot of encounters. Now, I bring that up because this is a person who lives near that area, and she gave me a story about a Dogman type. I would say it would be like she called it a werewolf. She didn't call it a Dogman, and she said she was having a dream. She had a nightmare that this werewolf type creature had gotten into her house, and it was chasing her and her teenage daughter around. But her daughter was like a little kid. Now her daughter was already 17, going on 18, and she said at that time her daughter was like a child. Her daughter was like 7 years old in the dream. She said it was like she was tiny, and she said that this werewolf-looking creature was chasing her and her daughter all over the freaking house. And eventually she grabbed an axe and fought it off and got into a room, and it was like trying to beat down the door, and she woke up. Well, a couple days later, her daughter came over because it was her daughter's boyfriend's birthday, and she was quite fond of her daughter's boyfriend at that time. Still is, I guess. They eventually got married. This was years ago when it happened. But she said that the daughter's boyfriend had come over, and he was an orphan. He didn't have parents. He was raised by he lived with his aunt, and then he lived with his grandparents. And so she kind of took him in from the time that they were in high school. He had dated her daughter or whatever, and they were close. And so they were having like a little birthday dinner for him and had a birthday cake and all that. And they come over, and she said that they were watching a show came on TV. It was like an advertisement for a werewolf movie, and I can't remember which one it was. She said it was like Cursed or something. I think it was like I think that's the one it was, with Christina Ricci. And she said that they were both kind of like, they were just like, whoa. And like, they were just like, she's like, that's like that thing from the other night. And she's like, what do you mean that thing from the other night? So she asked her daughter what she was talking about. What do you mean the thing from the other night? She goes, when we were driving home, she's like, this thing ran out in front of the car, in front of our vehicle, and it stopped in the road. And then she said, and this is what's really crazy, when they got up to, I mean, it's not crazy enough that a werewolf-looking creature runs out in front of your car.
Right.
But she said that it was a grayish-colored werewolf. Like the fur was gray, like a gray wolf, with a little bit of brown. And then she said that it just like went up, like it looked like it got real thin and then like went up and it was gone. And then they kept driving, and then they see it on her boyfriend's name was Brad. Brad looks over, he sees it on the passenger side of of their vehicle. And so her name is, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Her name is Michelle. I'll just say that. I mean, that's her name. I'm not gonna say the woman's name that gave me the story because I didn't ask for permission.
Right.
But anyways, Michelle and Brad were driving, and this thing went around the side of the car, and it was behind their car, and it was keeping pace with their car.
Oh, wow.
And they could feel pressure on the back of the car, but they couldn't see anything. And so they started screaming and crying, and there are two other girls that are in the car with them. And they started screaming and crying. These are high school kids. This happened years ago, but it was in that area, near the Canal River. And they're screaming and crying, and everybody's terrified.
Sure.
So the mom sat down, and she was floored. She goes, "What did this creature look like?" They described this grayish, and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" She's like, "That's the creature that I dreamed about. Was in the house and it was chasing us around." So
Wow.
I thought that was a very interesting story, and I was going like, "What?" Like, that is freaking weird, dude. Like, I mean, like I interviewed Dark Waters the other night, and it hasn't released yet, folks. And me and Dark both apologized that he had released it, and I took it and was like, "Hey, here it is." He dropped it, but
I clicked on that link, and
you couldn't find
private
it
video. I
because-
was really disappointed.
Yeah, well, what happened was, really quickly, not to veer off from the story, but he had told me it was coming out then the following Saturday. But when I saw the link, somebody, I guess, had already seen it. And so then I just took it and reposted. I said, "Oh, well, Dark must have already dropped it." So
Yeah.
I just said, "No biggie, I just dropped it, whatever." But that's not the case. So anyway, it's coming out. But me and him, we postulated on these theories about Dogman. I mean, we were talking. We get into some stuff about the nature of these creatures and what they are.
Yeah.
And he asks me some serious questions, very potent questions about kill or no kill.
Yeah, kill.
He asked me that. He
pro-kill.
goes, if this thing bluff charges you, and I'm not going to give you my answer. You're going to have to go to Dark Waters show with me, and you'll see the answers on there. But I'm going to tell you this. He asked me, what do I think about kill or no kill? He said, one of these things comes at you and your wife and bluff charges you. What do you do? And now I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to answer what I said.
Well, me and Barton can definitely give our answers.
Oh
here
yeah,
right
and
now.
I don't mind anyone hearing it either. Anything that threatens me or my family or anybody that I love, any animal like that, I'm going to kill it. It's pure and simple.
I mean, I feel the same way to the best of my ability. Obviously,
Right.
in an ideal sense, I would just hand it over to Wolf, and he'll
Right, and
do his best to take care of it. However,
give it a couple stiff jabs and a left hook, and maybe an uppercut.
Is that
Make
Loki
sure-
in the studio? Come on in, dude. What's up, bro? Hey, how's it going, man? Come on to the camera and say hi. Put him on there. Here, yeah, come on here. Hey. What's up? That's one of my oldest friends right here, dude. Let's see if we can get you in the camera a little bit more. There you go. This is Loki. Loki has been on the show, and he's talked about a lot of crazy stuff that's happened. He's a witness to some of the things at my old house that went down. So yeah, this stuff's real, folks. You know, if you think that it's a joke, I mean, like what happened to us in that house, it's definitely not. Things really happened in that house. But I think the weirdest thing that happened though was probably just you being sober every now and then. Was pretty.
Definitely none of that. Definitely none of that.
Go sit down over there, man. Join us. Tony, he's going to take over for you for a few minutes here. Let me get Loki up in here and just come to drop by and visit the studio.
Good. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
It's fun.
You.
I am really
So,
good.
yeah, but the thing about that story, though, what really intrigued me about that whole story, though, was just like the fact that she was dreaming about it, and then at the same time, that was the night that her daughter and her daughter's friends and her boyfriend were terrorized
Yeah.
by the same being or creature, you know, and you're just like, I don't know, you know, like when me and Dark were talking about the Dogman thing the other day, he feels very strongly that it's like this demonic presence. And when you get these stories of these things jumping up like that and then ending up behind someone's vehicle, I mean, what else can you say? I mean, it's not like
Right.
you can say, you know, like, oh, this is a physical flesh and blood creature that's that way all the time. Well, how the heck is she dreaming about it? And how is this
Yeah.
thing ended up behind their vehicle? And Barton, I know you have fielded a ton of reports of these creatures, just like I did.
Yeah.
When we went into these interviews, and I want you to tell everybody this, you were shocked at how many of these people we interviewed going in
Right,
blind
yes,
with a
I
few of
was.
them, and tell them about
I
their
had never
views.
talked to any of them. First of all, I haven't never interviewed a single one of these people that Josh and I talked to, and what they said really amazed me. You know, they were having multiple unexplained phenomena mess with them at basically the same time and same area. So I was really amazed at that because I thought that I was, you know, years ago I used to think that I was the only one that had experiences like that. But you know, I'm finding out now that there's a lot more people that have these kind of experiences that show the connectivity of these unexplained phenomena. You know, so. And it's really surprised me, and I'm glad I'm not the only one because, you know, I've been saying, my stories haven't changed for 20 years. I've been saying the same thing for 20 years since 2005 when I got online, and I haven't really got a lot of flack like you guys do, you know. People don't really mess with me over that stuff, but...
Until you get it bigger as a YouTuber.
Right, well, even if that happens, it still won't bother me, and it still won't change my story because I'm telling the truth, and that's all I can do, you know. I can't control who believes me or not, or who takes the information that I give them and what they do with it. That's out of my hands. All I can do is tell them what happened to me, and I can sleep good at night knowing that I've done all that I can to straighten people out. And the people who don't believe that there's a connection between UFOs and ghosts and Bigfoot and Dogman, well, I hate to say it, but there is definitely a connection, and sooner or later, everyone's going to know what's going on. So hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and the thing is, like if you are someone who is a in the public eye, and you're a YouTuber or a podcaster, an author, whatever, you're going to have people who are not going to like you.
Oh yeah.
Tony's walking around behind me. You're going to have people who are not going to like you because of your views.
Yeah.
Well, I'm never going to change how I feel or how I see the world. It's never going to change. I'm going to move this camera down a
Right.
little bit. We're still working on this. Yeah, there we go. Much better. I'm never going to change how I view these because once it's like a progression. You get to a certain point, and once you get to that certain point, you don't go backwards.
No.
You know, your theories evolve, and they continue to evolve into what they become.
Right.
And
Especially if their theories are backed by personal experiences like
Mhm.
mine. You know, I've been thinking about this stuff for like 40 or 50 years now, so I've had a long time to think about what's going on, and I think I've pretty much I've got a pretty good grasp of what's happening now. So, you know, like I say, it's not up to me who believes me or who doesn't. So I just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may, and I don't really care who don't like it or who don't agree with it. My job is to tell the truth. That's it. I'm not here to make money or be a big YouTube star or TV star or whatever. I'm not interested in any of that, you know. I'm not here to sell books. I'm just here to tell the truth, and whatever happens comes from that.
Yeah, there's a very interesting question I'd like to answer right there in the chat. It says, Kay's McIntyre. It says, do you think guys the paranormal plays a part in mental illness? My mother's schizophrenic, bipolar. She talks about spirits and demons. Yes. I have talked about an incident that happened to me at a place called Garden Terrace. Now, I've spoken of this. I think I might have talked about it on the show. Thank you, Eric Garcia, for that donation. But I was there with a guy named Oscar, who was highly schizophrenic. And this was a place that was full of homeless people. And a lot of homeless people have mental illness. That's why they're homeless. They can't handle paying bills and working and living. And there should be more facilities for people like that, but they're not. They're just cast out in the street, you know, or they end up in prison, jail, prison, whatever. But one of the things, this place, there was a lot of people who had been in jail that were there. You know, there were criminal element there. And then there were some that just didn't belong in society. And I think this guy was one of them. He was said to be violent. You know, he didn't get violent or aggressive with me. I was security there. He never acted out when I was there. But I was in this area of the library, and he was there, and he was sitting there, and I'll never forget this. And I'm sure I've told you this, Barton. I heard him talking to himself, and I was sitting there like, so I had like a magazine. I lifted it up so I can have to look over this guy. But it continued, and then I heard a voice behind him that was not his voice, and his mouth was closed. And I'll never forget this, dude. There was a voice that was speaking behind this guy. And I got, dude, the hair, just talking about it makes the hair stand on my arms. And I just like put the magazine down and I sat up and I heard this very guttural, demonic sounding voice that was like, you know, and you could hear it. It was not him. And he was sitting there shaking his head. So when I got back to the control room, there was a guy that worked there. They called him Tex. He was a tech that worked there. And he says he was kind of laughing. He was like, "Did you see it? I see what?" He goes, "His behavior. See how he is?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, now you know he's schizophrenic, blah blah blah." And I said, "Yeah, he's schizophrenic, but he's also got he's got mental illness, but he's also got some sort of demonic attachment."
Right.
And I thought that the guy was gonna think I was crazy. That was the day I met David Soto. And then David like introduced me to a whole nother world of spirituality. And this guy, when I talk about spiritual warfare, I'm being dead serious. This guy literally was like on fire with spiritual warfare. And he says, dude, that guy is not the only one here that's demonically obsessed. He's like, I'm working here to try to help these people. He really did. He was trying to help these people. And he actually was the person that helped my brother convert from Satanism. I watched him pull something off of my brother's back. You couldn't see it, but my brother's feet elevated up off the ground like 2 inches. And I've never seen anything like that in my
Talking
life.
about Diablo?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he helped him. He changed him.
Diablo would never play along with anything like that either.
No,
You know?
Diablo's. You've
Never-
known D
yeah,
forever,
never
Loki,
play along
and
with
D would never be like one of those people like, oh yeah, I'm having something happen.
Yeah.
He is. If you're full of crap, my brother's going to call you out on
Yeah,
it.
he seems like a no nonsense.
He's a very he's a fun loving guy, but he's not going to play around. He just said true on there. He just said it. That really happened. That was a true thing that really happened. And so this guy helped him get. And so there was a night one time when he called me, and I remember I was sitting there and I had fallen asleep on the couch, and Scorpion was in the other couch, and Willie, you know, Loki, our old friend Willie, who's passed away. They were there, and Willie handed me the phone. He said, "Hey, it's David. David was working up there at the place, and he says, 'Hey, I know you're off tonight, man, but I just wanted to tell you that there's something headed your way.'" And I thought this is a very weird and cryptic thing to tell me. And right then, all the doors in the house closed.
Oh, wow.
And then all kinds of weird stuff happened. Like the lights kind of flickered, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then right then I said that, and then it all happened. And Loki, you know, that's not even one of the weirdest things that ever happened in that house. Anybody who spent any time in that house for any length of time, and of course, he used to house sit for me.
Yeah.
When I would go down to Houston, and I think the last time you were just kind of like, "Yeah, I've had enough." It's kind of
Nobody could stay in that back room.
no.
And that back room was it.
It was bad, dude. It was always cold. It was always
full of
colder than the rest of the house. And I do believe, like what me and Dark were talking about on the show, and you'll hear about it on Saturday if you check it out. One of the things I learned about the nature of Dogman, and I talked about this off air with Dark too. I think this thing had stalked me and been around me more than once. Now, I've only seen it one time, but I know that it was like in my backyard, like in a spiritual form. And I honestly felt like this thing was stalking me. And there was one other time when I was working at a retirement community that wasn't built yet. They were building it. It was a construction site. And I'll never forget the guy I was working for. His name was Fritz, Mark Fritz. He was a really, really good guy. And I you know, he told me, "Hey, you know," he was a real laid back guy. He was like, "Just make sure you do a round every now and then outside." And after about a month, nothing goes on. And then I go outside one day and I heard footfall in the woods. I couldn't see anything. I kept shining my flashlight. It was right in the middle of the woods. There was nothing around. Now there's, you know, that was like years ago, 2008. Now there's like stuff, neighborhood built all around it, you know, all over that 620 Round Rock area. But there was nothing there. And I just went back inside, and then it was the feeling was so palpable that there was something there. And I kept thinking there was something outside that was stalking me. And the image in my mind, it kept coming to me of that Dogman. Well, when I looked at, when I looked at the creature that I saw in the episode The Haunted Tower, okay, we'll take that for instance. Anthony he's the one that named it. He listened to the show and when he was doing the editing, and he said, "We're going to call it The Haunted Tower." It wasn't my idea. But one of the things that he did, he put a name to what I had been going through. And I remember, if you listen to that episode, there is a point where I see this thing that looked like the cleaning lady, and then it became what I saw when I was 15. I absolutely positively knew that was not it. That was an imitation of my fear. It was something that was making my fear visible to me. It's like, okay, this isn't a Dogman. This isn't a werewolf. This is purely a demonic entity that's pretending to be. And plus, it was like human size, like 6 foot.
Yeah.
Thing I saw was like 7.5 feet, and it just emulated it. It wasn't real. But when I was in that house, there was something in the backyard. Only one time. It happened one time, and I was terrified to get up off the couch. I couldn't even get up. My cell phone was across the room. I was too scared to get up to even get off. And I'm not joking. I'm not a chicken. You know, you saw me last night, Barton. I'm not
You're not a chicken.
I'm not a scaredy cat. You know, and so
And you're not just bragging when you just tell all these things that you've done in your life. I got to see it firsthand last night. Josh is the real deal, and 100% respect for you, brother.
Yeah. And so whenever I started having this encounter, I want to call it an encounter. It went on for hours, and I couldn't get off the couch. I was terrified that if I did, this thing was going to come through the back, materialize, because I kept thinking it was invisible. I couldn't see it, and it was going to kill me. And so I laid there just afraid, for I don't know, it felt like several hours. I think it was probably a few hours. Anyway, finally my brother comes home, and he's with Willie, and they were like, "What's going on?" And I didn't tell him anything. I didn't say, "Hey, I've been sitting here shaking in my shoes for," because back then I had to be tough. I
An
couldn't
image to uphold.
yeah, and I couldn't just be like, "Hey guys," Loki's not going to go, "Hey, I'm going to follow this guy because he's scared of a
Right.
invisible werewolf in his backyard."
Thank God you guys are home.
Thank goodness you're here. Oh, I was gonna go get fish food, but I said, heck with that. I'm gonna let him die. So I just laid there, and it was weird because I didn't know where my dog was at. You remember, Ivan was always with me. Ivan was always with me, but whatever this Dogman thing, whatever. So I took Ivan out there to. It was about the last year before he passed away. I took him out there to this site where I thought I had the Dogman. I thought I had that creature, and he was like not having it, dude. He didn't want to get out of the freaking truck. So I literally had to try. I tried to drag him out of the truck and go into the building with me. He wouldn't do it. He stubbornly went limp, and he was 130-pound massive. I couldn't, you know how he was. Look, he was big.
Monster.
He was a monster. You couldn't just you couldn't forcibly make him get out of the vehicle. So he sat in the vehicle for most of the night while I was inside. And then there was one other night where, and this was really weird. And I've been wanting to talk about this story too. And I was actually going to talk about this one on Halloween once, because I wanted to locate the guy that I met, because he worked for a specific company, but I've not been able to get in touch with him. I did talk to his employer though. But there was a guy that used to walk up and down this street every night going home from work about 2 a.m. And I was working at this place. They were building a corporate park. This was like 13 years ago. And I'll never forget, there was a tree line there, and I went and parked by the tree line for whatever reason. I don't know why I was parked right there. And then I just thought, this is a crazy place to be parking. And I heard this loud howling noise coming from the woods, so it scared the crap out of me. And it was way in the back of the property. And they did have some equipment back there, but I figured, you know what, I could sit at the very front by the street and still see the equipment. So there's no reason for me to be parked back here. So I went up and I found a good place to park. Well, there was a guy that used to walk up and down that street, and one night he just waved at me, and he was holding a pizza, and I was sitting outside of my truck, and I was putting some dip in I always dip snuff, and the guy just walked up by my property, and he goes, "Man, I see you every night, dude." He goes, "Are you hungry?" And he started being really, really openly friendly guy, whatever. And I told him, I said, "Yeah, no, I'm good." He goes, "Well, I work at this pizza place over here, whatever." And then he worked at a Halloween, and I remember it was October, and I wanted to tell the story during October. He worked at a Halloween place where you scare people. What do you call, like the one we went to, Loki? What was it called? Haunted Hollow or something?
Yeah,
haunted
yeah.
house
You remember
type
that,
thing.
Anthony?
The one in Bastrop or
What was it
wherever.
called? Does anybody remember the name of it? Anyway, he worked at one of those. I think he worked at like Nightmare Factory or whatever. And so he was getting ready. It was like about to be Halloween season. He was getting ready to be working at that Nightmare Factory. And so he started talking to me, and just talking, and he had these tattoos on his arms, and he was covered in these tattoos, and they were satanic. I mean, they were literally satanic tattoos. So we started having this conversation, and I just, I said, "Okay, thank you for the offer," blah blah blah, and he walked off. But I saw him again the next night, and he came up, and we started talking, and we kind of made friends. We weren't like buddies or anything. But he told me, he says, "Look, I'm going to tell you something." He goes, I am a Satanist. Like, he literally told me this. And he says, but he goes, not all Satanists look at themselves as bad. A lot of them don't realize, they don't even think of themselves as bad people. Like, he's one of those people. Like, my brother thought he was a good guy, even though he was Satan. He's like, "Oh, do what thou wilt." That's their attitude.
Yeah.
But he told me, he goes, I'm a Satanist. And he goes, "But I'm going to tell you something. There is something after you." He goes, "And when I walk by you, I can feel its presence." He goes, "And it's back there by that tree line." And he's like, "I have been a part of conjuring ceremonies, things like that." And he says, "Somebody conjured something on you when you were young." And he says that it still follows you sometimes to this day, but not. And he goes, not very often. He's like, it just pops up every now and then. Like he knew everything, but And I said, how you know? He goes, well, I can feel its energy. I can see it. It looks like a red, angry being. And so this guy, I can't remember his freaking name now, but at the time I remember trying to get in touch with him like later on because I started talking to him about Christ. I started talking to him about God. And I said, whether you believe in the devil or don't believe in the devil, or you worship yourself or whatever it is that you do, I told him, I said, there is a God and his son is Christ and he does love you and he wants you to be a part of, whatever. And he kind of put his head down and he asked me a question. He was like, do you really think that, that there's salvation for somebody? And he's like, not that I'm entertaining it. He goes, but do you think someone like me could be saved? I said, from what I've seen, you're not a bad guy. You wouldn't come to me and warn me and offer me food and everything else if you were a bad person. Mm-hmm. I said, but you have a belief and you have this whatever, and so eventually that site ended and I didn't see him again. And then one day, Scorpion had met him too. So one day we started trying to find him. We went over to the place he used to work at. The pizza place he no longer worked there. And we knew the owner. Remember the guy, who I'm talking about, Nikki. Yeah. Okay. My mom used to like to go there all the time. Anyway, he worked for that guy. And so when I talked to Nikki, Nikki's like, no, he was a good kid and he quit, blah, blah, blah. He was a really nice guy. And then he had dreams of going out to LA and he wanted to build some kind of a haunted house, big thing out there with his production company, whatever. But anyway, it was weird that he came up to me and he told me about this thing that followed me. And he said that eventually it would lose his attachment, what he thought. He said eventually, he's like, you're very strong in your faith. He's like, and typically he goes, I'm repelled by people like you. He's like, but you have, like this aura that is inviting to anyone and everything. And he said, so this entity, though, will eventually lose its attachment to you. It's going to lose its way because you're very strong spiritually. This is what he told me. This is what he said. And it mirrored what my friend David had said, who was Buddhist by philosophy, Christian by faith, which is a real thing because Buddhism is actually a philosophy, believe it or not.
Yeah, not a religion.
Not really a religion, yeah. And so he was a philosophical Buddhist, a religious Christian, but not really religious, more spiritual, but he was a follower of Christ, or Isis as he called him. And he told me, he said, this attachment that I was very strong at that time. So that was literally, I think, like 3 or 4 years before I met this other guy, the Satanist, who I can't remember his name now. I think his name was like Noah or something. But he told me all this weird stuff, and I thought, man, I've heard this before. So, if you look at all the different people from all these different walks of life, Tony's mother was another one. She's a Buddhist, and she's shamanistic, and she had told me that there was something that had been following me for a long time. And then, of course, Chad, Chad Logie, which is Tony's stepdad. And they said the same thing. It all kind of mirrored or echoed. Well, one of the things that I noticed, like when we were interviewing some of these people, and I would say 2 or 3 of them, we kind of knew what to expect. But the other ones, we really didn't. Do you think that's accurate, Barton?
I didn't know what to expect with any of them, honestly, Brother Wolf. I know you know a couple of them a lot better than I did, but basically I was just totally surprised about what all they went through. I figured they were just Bigfoot witnesses or Dogman witnesses, but no, they were, all the Dogman phenomenon and the Bigfoot phenomenon. Things follow that. When you see a Bigfoot, then a lot of times you get home and you start to have poltergeist activity in your house, and you start to see UFOs outside. So I know what happened to me. It's called the hitchhiker effect, and I was completely blown away by what people like Daryl Denton and Bigfoot Michigan Rob had to say. Yeah, it really was. Abe Sias, yeah, completely taken by surprise by it.
Yeah, and I was too. There were only, like I said, a couple people that I knew what to expect. I think Ron Murphy was one of them,
right?
Because Ron, I had spoken to him, prior to the interview, and then of course we talked to him at length at the conference, or I did.
Well, I didn't get to
So-
talk to him very long at the conference, just for a few minutes, so I didn't know his story at all. But yeah, totally surprising. And most of these people are having the same type experiences, right? So if there's no connection between any of these unexplained phenomena, then tell me how it is that one follows the other so hand in hand. It just doesn't make any sense.
Put the address on there. So I guess our friend wants to come visit to the
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Oh, cool.
so
Well, I'm sure it'd be
we might have our friend come visit now. He might
that'd be
come.
great. The guy from the Water Boy,
Yeah.
everybody.
We just Dante.
Yeah, I was listening.
Yeah.
to
Yeah. So he
Yeah.
he just sent me a message asking where we're at. So give him the address. If he wants to come, that's fine. He can come to the studio. But that's cool. I mean, he wants to drop by.
Sure.
But the thing is, I often think about these people, because I lost touch with David, and then that kid, I can't remember his name. It makes me sad I didn't remember his name, but they gave me some very good information, and I think they were being very honest.
Oh, yeah.
And even though the guy's a Satanist, I prayed for him. I prayed for him for a
Yeah.
long time, and I hope that he turned his life around. And if you're out there, you're listening, I appreciate you. Give me the heads up. And he even told me to stay away from that wood line because that thing was there, and it was almost like a demarcation marker. You needed to stay beyond that. And it's funny because even someone who doesn't share your faith at all and is even it's completely anathema to it. And how do you say it? Whatever.
Anathema.
Anathema.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's you can still learn something from, because I think God sends you messages in all kinds of ways.
He
Right,
could've it could have affected him negatively if you and it clashed too. So
Yeah.
that's probably, it might have been self-interest for him.
Yeah, well, it could have been.
So-
There you go. It could have been too. I mean, and I know, Loki, you look at things very pragmatically because we've dealt with a lot of people who we
Yeah.
thought were
Yeah.
only up and up, and they're not, and then they turn out to be real.
You gotta
Bags
suss
of-
people out big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Now
I mean,
more than ever.
mm-hmm. Oh, dude,
Sure.
now it's all. Yeah, because you can't just take people at their word and talk to them blindly. I spent hours on the phone talking with you, Barton, and then of
Oh,
course,
man.
our
Hundreds
wives
of hours.
talking and
Hundreds
talking.
and hundreds.
And same
Yeah.
thing with Ken. We all did. And then going into
Ken's
the
a great guy.
conference, how many conversations did we have with Lyle, with Ken, with Nick Valenti?
Well, I didn't actually have many conversations with any of those guys, man. Everybody was like swarming all over me,
Oh, no, I'm talking about leading up to the conference.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All the conference
all of them
calls
great
we
guys,
had, yeah.
great people, yeah.
We would talk on the
think a
phone
lot of all
probably
of them.
at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
But we at the conference,
Oh man,
you were busy. You were very busy.
Wow.
You were very popular at the conference, and then of course all of y'all left me to go eat pizza. And
Yeah,
and-
well, good thing we did because we
That's
got a
fun.
lot
No, that's
done,
fine.
yeah.
And then I stayed behind and was accused
do
of
the
price
work.
gouging people at the end of the conference, which I
Oh,
didn't
wow,
do.
Yeah,
I thought that was
bull crap.
lovely because I'm over here giving away $3,000 worth of merchandise,
Right,
and
you
they're
just
like,
give
"Here's
everything
Josh
away."
Turner, price gouging people." Blah, blah, blah. And
So
I'm
there's
all
always
like,
going to be people that talk like that about you, man, because one, they don't know you, and two, if they know you, then they're jealous of how successful you are. And like I say, to me, you're the greatest of all time, man. You're the only person in the whole world for love or money that could have get me to break my personal vows, and you've already got me to break 2 of them. So I swore that I would never talk at any Bigfoot conference because that's not what I'm about. And I swore that I would never get on an airplane. So I've broken both of those vows for you. So, yeah, you're the only
How
one that
was
could
the
have done
flight?
that. It was good. The
it
landing was
wasn't
a little.
as bad as you thought it would be.
No, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but the landing was a little sketchy, I have to say. Yeah.
He was terrified.
Like,
Oh, yeah, I've been
Like before
afraid
the
of flying my
flight,
whole
like I
life.
was having anxiety for whatever reason. I don't know why
Yeah.
I was having anxiety. I don't know what was going on. I was sitting there trying to watch the game, and I was just like, feel all weird,
Yeah.
what I'm having anxiety, And then Nellie's like, you need to talk to Barton. Barton's not doing good. But then when I called you, you were just like, I'm fine, brother. I'm just about to
I
get on the
was,
plane. You sounded like
so
you
it was
were,
like it was too late to back out. I'd done given my word, and you know how I am, brother. If I give you my word, then I'm gonna keep my word no matter what, So
yeah, you sounded cool as a cucumber.
yeah,
You didn't sound like
Letitia
you
was
were...
actually more nervous than me, believe it or not, and she's flown like
Letitia.
dozens of
I
times.
don't know about this. I
She was,
I
yeah.
got to ask about
She was
this.
so nervous. They kept delaying our
Tish.
flight and switching our gates, and 5 or 6 times,
but
and she was
she
like,
wasn't
"Oh my
like
God!"
that on the plane, though, right?
No, she wasn't nervous on the plane,
Oh,
but
okay.
she was
'Cause I'm like,
nervous
I know that
about
ain't
the.
true.
Yeah.
Letitia, he's over here lying on you. You better
so
get in
it
here,
was the
girl.
landing for you. That was it.
Oh my gosh! So I expect
Barton's
them
over here
to-
saying that you were the one having the
shit on
anxiety
TV,
on the plane.
the plane touches down, boop, and then bounces, boop,
Come here,
and
come on,
bounces.
come on.
This plane landed, touched down one time, and it stopped. I'm like, holy crap.
Hey, so we got Letitia in the studio.
Yeah.
Is Barton lying? He said that you were the one having the anxiety.
Before the flight.
Oh, no. No.
I didn't have any anxiety,
You
honey.
had all the anxiety.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Well, then I stand corrected, listeners.
So is Barton lying to us?
Like,
Oh my gosh, Barton, you're lying to us.
You have to take the L.
Yeah, take the loss on that.
I'll go ahead and take the loss on that one, but no, she
You
was
got to
more
take
nervous
the L
about
on
the
that one.
flight
You're right.
than I
Look,
was.
you got
Yeah.
you on that one.
Get it under
Now,
the-
once I got on the plane and got in the air, it was like, okay.
He's like, what is this? He's talking about he's like, Letitia was scared. So when you
Not scared. I said you were nervous about
Yep.
the flight and it's getting switched so many times,
Actually, no.
delayed.
I was nervous about driving in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
you know what,
that's,
driving is more dangerous
Oh,
technically
my
than
gosh. In
flying.
Nashville, yes.
Nashville was crazy.
Well, driving in Austin, you could die.
Well, these people act like they got some sense down here, man. In Nashville, they drive like total
Well, let me
idiots.
tell you something, Loki, you drive in Austin all the time. You know
Yeah.
that you've had jobs driving.
Yeah.
Austin's terrible.
Terrible.
It's terrible. And the other day, I asked a mutual friend of me and Loki's Arash. You know Arash,
Yeah.
he got
Yep.
spinners.
Yep.
And I said, hey man, are we gonna go throw some dice up there in Choctaw? You know, let's go gamble. He goes, I just got done gambling. I got off the interstate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's
gambling
like, I
with my
gamble every
life.
day, getting on the interstate, and
Right.
if I live, then I win. It's a win.
Well,
you
we
know?
went through Nashville at like rush hour traffic, and it was terrible, man.
That's crazy.
Terrible.
Well,
I like
I'm sure
driving through
Nashville's
Atlanta.
bad, but I mean, you said people here have sense. I don't think so. You saw how much sense they had last night.
We haven't been driving around, riding around in the car with you for a couple of days now, and not one time have we been cut off or almost ran off the road or cussed
'cause
out.
that's 'cause
or
I'm doing all
shot at. You know what I'm saying? So
Well, we haven't
people
yet.
in Nashville
Yeah,
are
with
just
spaghetti arms, like, for lanes.
right. People in Nashville are just.
She keeps saying that we have like these really thin lanes.
Y'all have like tiny lanes.
Tish, what are you talking about?
Like, I'm telling you.
We're in Texas. We have trucks.
We have trucks.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I think it's the.
I don't know, folks. If you're from Texas, sound off if you think we have skinny lanes over here. You know what I think it is. I don't think that's what it. I think what it is because of the bike lanes.
Maybe the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
and
take space.
nothing will change your opinion about this city until you see some guy in a thong on his bike
Wow.
riding in front of a school. Why is this guy allowed to do that in front of a school? He was right in front of a school.
Wow.
And he was right in front of us, and he wouldn't move. And I honked at him. He turns around, and he's like, and he gives me the bird, you know. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude. And he's got his booty hanging out of the, you know.
Man, that's
we have a
crazy.
naked bike ride that goes on here, like a midnight
That's right.
bike ride.
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
we came out of a convenience store and then there was like 300 bicycles around us and we were like, oh, this is cool. But and then you look closer and they're all naked.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. But I've never been to Austin before.
Yeah.
Seen
it-
a lot of things for the first time.
Absolutely crazy the stuff that we've seen and things that we've and I can tell you this right now, there was a time, I'm not joking, I'm not making this up, man. We were standing in front of the club and literally this guy, he got his neck cut. And Loki you were there that night. And it was the guy had his neck cut and he laid there and was bleeding to death right in front of us. And then the dumb owner who thought he was the boss, he tells me and you and Frazier to pick him up and move him while he's bleeding to death. And I'm like, I don't know this guy. I don't know what he has or what, you know. When you see that happen, and it's not even the first time you've seen it happen there, that's when you know that Austin downtown is crazy. It's
Yeah, I can
absolutely
believe it.
insane. And then not only did this guy get his throat cut, and we thought he was a goner, he lived. And then
Good. Yeah,
Frank,
good.
that guy that got his throat cut by a panther, he lived too. So I've seen two guys get their throat cut. My brother got his throat cut too. My brother, don't forget about that.
Yeah,
He's got
yeah,
his throat
he
cut. He
showed me
showed you the
the scar.
scar.
Less than a
Yeah.
mile to the hospital.
Yeah.
There where we used to work.
Yeah.
So.
And I
I can
got
believe you.
stabbed, and y'all were there. Then I got stabbed, and then I ended up in the hospital, and I woke up 2 days in a coma.
Oh, wow.
You know, so I mean, like when you see enough of this, I mean, it's crazy. And then Loki, you were there. There was another night where I knocked a guy's eye out of his head.
Yep.
The most intense thing about that to me was the fact that he did not go unconscious. Like he walked
Yeah.
down the stairs with his eye hanging out, and it was in between his hands. You know.
Right. Well, I can
And-
believe you, brother, because I was only here 2 nights and was almost killed. So, you know,
It's crazy.
it's like anything goes down here.
It is very wild. There's some
Yeah.
wild stuff that goes on, and the homeless people down here are just out of control. It's like the Wild West with them.
Yeah.
Like if you throw something out the window, like I was telling you, Letitia, you throw a bottle out the window, you're gonna get a fine, whatever. But if they poop in the street or pee all over the place, or even throw it at you,
They're fine. Yeah.
everything's fine. Nothing happens to them. There's no consequences.
That's crazy.
So you don't want me to litter, but yet they have entire homeless camps just full of trash.
Yeah.
First time I've ever seen a homeless camp when we got here.
Yeah.
Seen the people
Me too.
sleeping under the benches.
It's insane. I mean,
It's like, what are we paying rent for?
yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Why don't
We
pay
could just
taxes?
go out there and sleep in a tent, and why bother, But I'll tell you a story. On that note, we're gonna tell you a story about being homeless. Now, my uncle was homeless for a long time. He's finally now in housing. But there was a guy that was right adjacent to his camp, and I'll tell you something weird about it, man. This guy told me that something grabbed him and tried to pull him out of his tent back when they had the tent camp, whatever. And so my uncle had stayed in that homeless camp, and so they all kind of dispersed from there because a lot of weird stuff was happening. Now my uncle, I haven't talked to him about it. Totally, this guy says he knew my uncle. I have not confirmed that with my uncle, but
Where is this camp at?
it's over there by the hospital,
Which one?
St. David's North.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you go across
Right
that
by
parking,
35 right there?
yeah, well, it's by Mopac.
Oh, on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side. So you probably know if you go by St. David's North and you go into the across that where the underpass is, where the railroad tracks are, back up in there, there's a homeless camp.
There's a lot of caves right back.
There
in
is,
too.
there is, and
They
this,
love it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so there was a guy who told me that something one night. It was cold. It was in the dead of winter. I mean, he said it was like in the 30s. It wasn't like, freezing. Like it can get really cold here. It can get down in the teens,
Yeah. Feels like Florida to me. compared
Well,
to
heck, I'm gonna
Kentucky.
tell you right now. Last winter, it got in the teens 2 or 3 times, and then the winter before, it got down below freezing for an entire week. So it does get cold. But he said it was cold that night, but it wasn't really cold. And funny that you talk about Florida because he was actually from like Georgia, and so it was really cold for him. He was very cold. He was like from southern Georgia, and so he was like, dude, it was very cold. I came to Texas because I wanted to be in the heat, But something grabbed him, started pulling him out of his tent, and he said that it wasn't an animal. It had the ability to unzip his tent, and pull him by his legs out, and it left deep gashes in his lower legs. And when I met him, I talked to him. We were standing at the Chick-fil-A right there on Mopac and Parmer, and I was ordering some food. Well, it's such a cluster. You know what? Trying to they make you loop around. I don't know what's going on with that. Tony got caught up in it the other day. So anyway, I had to pull in and go in to order the food. And this guy, this was months ago, but the guy was telling me this story because I had the Paranormal Roundtable shirt on, like you're wearing, exactly like that one, except mine was just all white. It was black.
Yours didn't look as good as mine, though, right?
Well,
tailor made.
Yeah, you've done air conditioning
Custom
on
made
yours.
for me.
No, and it
You're
doesn't.
not from Texas?
He's from
No,
Kentucky.
Oh,
He like-
there it is.
yeah, he's from Kentucky.
That explains it.
Yeah.
That's how we all dress in Kentucky.
And so the guy tells me this story. He's like, I have a weird story. So we started talking, and he told me the homeless camp he lived in, and I said my uncle lived over in that camp by choice. My uncle chose to live. He didn't want to live with people, and we tried. Me and Anthony, we tried to get him to come stay with us, but he wanted to live like that, But now he's in housing, and so that's good. But this guy said, yeah, I know your uncle. He said he knew my uncle. He started telling me this crazy story, and he showed me his ankles, and I would have taken pictures of his ankles, but I mean, it's not going to prove anything. But my phone was in the vehicle, in the truck, and I had to get the food, whatever. So I'm talking to this guy, and he says this thing literally put its claws like around my ankle, started pulling me out. I thought he was going to say something along the lines of like a Bigfoot or a Dogman type creature or something. No. When he looked up at this thing, he saw antlers.
Really?
He saw antlers, and the weird thing is, and we've talked about not deer on the show.
Yeah.
I don't know that this was not a not deer, but it sounded like a not deer because he said that it had a protruding snout, but it was like a deer that had teeth, and he said that there were 4 or 5 people around that were screaming and yelling, and there was chaos, pandemonium, going on in the camp. And he's like, this thing began to pull me out of my tent. And he said when this thing did it, it literally it had put its like it had hands like a man, really rough, like a man, like a. He said he had like an old dog, and he said like my dog got really old and its paws were all like so rough and calloused up.
yeah.
He said it's what it felt like.
Sort of like my hands, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Feel
but
like
like how a
sandpaper.
dog. He said if you rub it one way, it feels like you're going against the grain of the
Yeah.
paws. It feels like there's all these bristles. That's how he was describing it to me. And he said that it stuck its nasty claws, and he said his lower leg got infected, and so he ended up at that hospital right there for like a week because they thought that they had to get rid of the infection. So he had to take all this antibiotics, like what's it called, cephalac? I don't know, whatever, cephalaxin, something like that. He was giving me all these names of this stuff, and the thing pulled him out of his tent, and he said that it was like started to drag him away, like it just
On two
said,
legs?
on two legs, and it didn't have feet. It had like hooves, but they were like flattened out, and it was like a man deer type thing with sharp teeth, but it had antlers and it had an upper body. He said the upper body wasn't huge, muscular, it wasn't real. It was just kind of thin, kind of lanky. And he said that but the legs were really big, almost like how a kangaroo's thighs or legs look really big, and it was kind of awkward looking. He said, and it was kind of it was making this noise. And he said that you could hear the hooves like kind of backing up, and he was fighting and kicking and everything. He's not a little guy; he's tall, and it was pulling him out of his tent. And he said that finally one of these other homeless people got brave, and they had a stick with fire on it. Like they had a fire because they're always building fires. They're everywhere around the city. So he goes up to it, and the guy that hit him said was his friend. Was named Mingo. He was a little Hispanic dude, and he goes, but he hits this thing on the back. And it catches its back on fire. And so the thing doesn't respond to this. It just keeps doing what it's doing, dragging him, and he starts to get to the tree line. And then it stops and starts to go like, there's something on my back, then it lets go. So at that point, he doesn't waste a moment. He starts to crawl, and then he gets up and he runs. And his pants have been yanked down, off of him because he's been being drugged, So he lifts up his pants and he's like, dude, I'm running back toward the encampment, and everybody's scattering. And there was one guy there that had an arrow, he didn't have a crossbow or a bow. He just had an arrow like you would put in a bow,
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the guy was brave enough to run up and like stick it in its back while this thing was playing with messing with its fire or whatever. And the guy like took off running away from it, and the thing turned around, and then it just walked into the woods. And
Wow.
the fire, he said, was the weirdest thing. The fire just kind of like went away, like it just became black smoke.
It's like a primeval thing. So he's laying there, and like how you lay in your bed, you would never lay with your head toward the door.
No.
So it's like it's like a primeval fear you have. You're laying there, and something grabs your feet, and then it's pulling you, it's pulling you, it's pulling you. And then somebody has to attack it with fire, and then an arrow.
An arrow.
It's like something out of time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy to think about that.
Yeah. And he said that if it wasn't for those, because he said that he thought for sure this thing was focused on him. And if that other guy wouldn't have distracted it by stabbing it, he said, I'm sure that it would have gotten itself under composed.
That story could have came from anywhere in the last 10,000,
that's right.
4,000 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very
That's
primal.
so crazy.
The antler
just
part was
crazy.
a little odd, but yeah.
Do what?
The antler part, the antler.
Well,
description.
it's a knot deer. I mean, if you go back and you listen to the show, I did a whole show
Well,
about
a lot of
knot
the
deer.
listeners are probably thinking Wendigo, but
Could be.
the Wendigo, originally
wintertime.
didn't have antlers, right? That was like a later addition to that.
Well, what if the antlers was something it was wearing?
Yeah.
I mean, because
It didn't feel like an induction like a Wendigo can get you.
yeah.
That thing was just like maybe like juvenile grabbing, and it wasn't clear on what it was doing. It didn't seem like
Maybe it wanted
it was
to.
like a battle.
You think it wanted to eat him?
I don't know. It was like a battle.
Well,
It
I don't know
was weird.
why else would be dragging him off
Yeah.
into the woods. Do you?
Well, I mean, as weird
I don't think
as
it
this,
wanted to play chess with him.
No, no. And as odd as this may sound to the listeners at home and to everybody in the studio tonight, I can tell you this with all certainty. If you went around to these homeless camps and you talk to these people, they will tell you some really, really weird stories.
Right.
One of the guys that I'm friends with, he's an old fighter. In fact, you probably know him. He used to. I don't want to get into our mutual friend that we're not really friends with anymore, but he's in that guy's camp.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to get into the. God, I don't want to start anything. I'd like to, but I don't want to. I'm not going to do something stupid. But anyway, I'm not going to say anything stupid. But this guy, he gave me a story, and he said that there was a guy that his wife used to go give sandwiches to the homeless people. She would she'd buy a bunch of cans of tuna. You know, it's cheap. It's like 50 cents a can, whatever. And she would make like a bunch of sandwiches, and then she would give them out to the homeless people. And she said that there was this one homeless guy who had 2 big scars. It just looked like a cat or something. It just real deep gashes on his face. And he didn't say anything the first time he saw him. And then the next time he saw him, he said that it looked like it was healing. And so he'd seen the guy 2 or 3 weeks at this church where they give the food away to. And he asked the guy, he said, what can I ask what happened to your face? And he says, I had a run-in with a haint. And she goes, well, what is it? Is a black guy, right? And she's like, well, what is a haint? What is that? Like, you know, and he's like, well, it's a haint. And he goes, I'm from Louisiana. We call him a haint. He said it was a big hairy creature. He goes, and I was walking through the trail. He goes, and I was looking at my phone. He goes, you know, some of these homeless people, they have phones. I mean, they're not, you know, they just choose to not live in houses, you know. Oh, yeah, my uncle had a cell phone. So he was walking. He was like, I was looking down at my phone, and it was dark, and I was headed back to my encampment. Now, his encampment was over off of Cameron, okay? And you know where that's at, Luke. So he said that he heard sound to his right, and he turned around to look, and he said, next thing you know, he just gets smacked, and there was this big hand, and this thing knocked him down flat on his back, and he had a backpack on, and he felt like the crunch on his spine. This thing had come down and like pushed its foot. He had this big oversized foot. He said it was really smelly. It smelled like terrible, like death and like throw up and whatever. And it pushed down on his chest, and he said it cracked 2 of my ribs. And he said I felt like it was going to pop, my spine was going to pop through from the pressure from my backpack. And he said that I look up and I just see this thing with his mouth kind of going like up and down, up and down. And he said the face looked like there was this big forehead, big giant forehead, and then there was like some hair right here that kind of went back. And he started describing what to me was like a primitive man. But this thing had like oversized claws and really huge feet, and you're sitting there going like, Bigfoot? You know, I asked him, I said, do you think it was like a Sasquatch? He goes, yeah. Like you could call it that. He was like, he said it clawed the heck out of my face. So he told this guy, this friend of mutual friend, I don't want to say his name, was like like I said, he's friends with this other guy and they could start something. But anyways, this dude, like he told me that story. And I don't remember the guy's name of the guy the story that he got or whatever. But this guy's a fighter. I've known him for years that told me the story, but his wife is the one that would give away the sandwiches. So I reached out to him maybe like a month ago, and I was like, hey, you know, y'all still do that, you know? And he said, yeah, every now and then my wife will go to the homeless camps. We'll go and we'll give away a bunch of sandwiches. And I actually thought about it. I don't have a lot of time. It is something I would like to do. Because I would actually like to be involved to help people. For one thing, you could actually help people, but then you could also get stories, you know. I don't want to go tag along and just be like, y'all give away sandwiches, I'm going to ask them about paranormal stories. Because then you're not really being a good person that way. But I would like to do it just so I could, you could help these people because you're feeding people, and that's a good thing. Yeah. But then you could also talk to them and say, hey, because they are kind of a forgotten class of people. You don't think about what they go through or what they see.
Completely overlooked.
Yeah. And I got one out of a Walmart, a guy that was living behind an encampment in Arkansas behind a Walmart. And I'll never forget, this guy told me the story, and I've told it on the show, so I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail about it. But this guy was telling me a story about how this thing had followed him from the Walmart, and it ended up attacking him and grabbing him and whatever. And like I said, I've told it on the show before, but I started thinking about that. And so when that guy came into Chick-fil-A that day and he started telling me that story, I just, I made mental notes. I ran back in the truck and I wrote down what I could remember, every detail that he told me. He didn't have a phone at that time to give me a number so I could reach him. But he did say he knew my uncle. And so it was really weird, and it was kind of like an aha moment. I thought, my wife's been wanting to do something for a while, like as far as like helping people, like just in a bigger way, like actually, going out. And I thought that would be great. And then if they had something to tell, you could help them by letting them tell their story. And if they wanted you to, you could tell it on the show.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's something I thought about.
Sounds like a good idea to me. I mean,
Yeah, I thought it would be a
especially
good
the helping
idea.
people part. You help a lot of people, Josh. I know because, we've helped a lot of people together in the past, and I can see how many people that you help right now. So, but yeah, it sounds like a great idea. I encourage you to do that, you and Nelly. Even
Yeah.
if you don't get any stories, you've done a good thing.
So you go out there and you give them the sandwiches, and you're like, "Do you have any stories?" Like, no. You start taking the sandwiches away.
Yeah, take the sandwich. Give it to
Hold
the
the
next one. What
sandwich
about
up.
you? Do you have stories?
Oh my gosh!
You making it up.
You're just like, "Oh, well, you know what? Sorry."
For long, it'll be like everybody be like, "Yeah, we all got stories."
And then they all start
Just-
telling you
yeah.
stories, and you're like, "Hey, man, these are crazy stories, but they told me them.
Right, I'm going to repeat them.
Could be true, well, could be not too."
Yup.
And so you're sitting up there with these stories,
Yeah.
and
Maybe
You're
you
like
can go
Bribing them with
undercover and
sandwiches.
You can find where they are, and you could receive a sandwich, and then just you could just be shoulder to shoulder with one of them the whole day, and he wouldn't even
Yeah.
notice. And then you would just lay down with them at night, and then you would have the sources. You'd be like, "Hey, does anybody know any scary stories?"
Yeah.
And then it could happen.
if he's anybody know any scary stories,
Deep undercover, Loki.
He's like, "I
Deep
can't sleep.
undercover.
I
something grabs me by my feet, starts pulling me out of the tent. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I don't want this. Where's the guy with the fire?" Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it would be something. I don't know. It just I thought it'd be a good idea. Because I know that people feel better whenever I talk to someone and they're able to give me a story or we correspond back and forth. I think it's cool because I can tell that it's like something off of their chest.
Right, yeah. It's
And,
relief.
and somebody listens to them. Somebody to tell them, "Hey, this is real. This stuff really happens. I don't give a crap what the mainstream tells you. I don't give a crap what your neighbor who's, Joe Sixpack and Sally Soccer Mom and like, hey, we live in this reality, whatever. I don't give a crap what they're doing because I know this is real. I've experienced it my whole life, and I've had a bunch of people who've had, incidents around me who have experienced this. I know that what was going on in my house was real. Several people, as one sitting right across from me, and Scorpion and Diablo, they're in the chat right now. I mean, they witnessed these things with me. And our mutual friend, he lived with me at one time, and he had a lot of weird things happen to him.
Something was going on there.
Yeah.
To say that it didn't would be the weird.
Yeah.
That would be the thing.
It'd be a lie. If
Yeah.
you said it didn't happen, you'd be lying
Yep.
because I mean, here's what's really weird. There was a picture of a Frazetta print that was on one of the bedroom walls,
My
and it
all-time
was
favorite artist.
constantly being thrown off of the wall because it was of a werewolf.
Oh, okay.
It was the one where the werewolf's kind of like, and Dracula.
Dracula's
Dracula's
underneath
kinda,
him. He's attacking Dracula.
no, not the one where he's on top of him. It's the one where he's like in front of him and Dracula's kind of beholding him.
Okay, yeah, that's not Dracula beholding. It's just like a guy.
Well, they said
Kind of like Sherlock Holmes.
They said it's
looking
Dracula
guy.
because on the actual print it says it on there.
Really?
Yeah,
I
he's got
didn't
like a
think that was
cape and
Dracula.
he's got a red and he's got like.
I know the
you can-
one where he's attacking Dracula and Dracula's. Oh,
If you look at those two pictures though, it's actually a continuation.
oh, okay.
The first one is where he confronts him, and then the second one he's on top of him,
Oh, all right.
and he's got the same
cool.
clothing on. I had the one where it was like where they were like he was running into him in the woods or whatever,
Yeah.
and so that picture for whatever reason angered the spirit in that room or something because he threw that picture off the wall over and over again, and
It was the hallway for me.
the hallway was
Between
terrible.
The door and the bathroom.
Uh huh.
Right in there was just weird.
That's where with that little
was
thing would
something.
jump in and out of the
And
mirror.
there was a mirror right
Mirror,
there.
yeah.
And you would see something and then go look and then it wouldn't be there and you would just be like, "It got me again." I don't know what it was. And you don't want to dig too deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
Some houses are like that. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
they have things in there that you can't see.
Well, at one point you had a house for rent,
Yeah.
and I asked Loki very point blank. I said, "Is it haunted?" And he kind of laughed. He goes, "It's not like your house." I was
Yeah,
like,
it's just haunted a little.
Whatever
Yeah.
you bring.
yeah, whatever you bring is the energy you bring. It's like on Star Wars, and it's like you just have whatever you bring with you. Yeah, but I look at this situation, case by case, And it goes back to our interviews we did recently, Barton, with all these different people.
Yeah.
And it always seemed like they said the same thing. They always kind of came back, and we didn't coach them. They always
No.
came back to the same thing and said, I think this is all part of a greater whole.
Right. Well, what we did do, brothers, we knew what questions to ask. So a lot of these people don't. And they'll ask about their Bigfoot sighting, but they won't ever ask hey, have you ever had anything else that happened to you that you can't explain in your life? Have you ever seen anything that you couldn't explain? And if you just dig a little deeper, you'll find that the majority of people actually do have experiences that relate to whatever they're talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's crazy, but yeah, we didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about any of those people that we interviewed. Really, I met a couple of them at the conference and talked to them for a couple of minutes, but that's all I knew. And to hear them saying all this stuff that really matched my own experiences when I was younger, it was just kind of mind-boggling to me. It's not something you expect, but
It's always good to meet people
Right.
with like ideas and
Right, yes.
experiences and all that stuff.
Right, but you just have to know how to question them, And a lot of people, if they're just interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon,
Yeah.
they'll just, hey, have you ever experienced the Bigfoot phenomenon? And they'll be like, yeah, back in 1970, whatever, we saw Bigfoot from across the road. And that'll be it. They'll let it go at that,
Yeah.
right? But an experienced investigator did try to dig a little bit deeper and see if there's anything else that's going on beneath the surface that they might not have mentioned. And that's what Wolf and I did. And we were really surprised at how many people had multiple unexplained phenomena messing with them at the same time in the same place, just like what happened to me in Spotsville in 1975, when I was 9 years old. So it's really crazy stuff out there. You just got to know how to uncover it and how to talk to people.
And what about how much of like what we live in and society that like they don't want you to talk about it? And
Right, yes.
you're living a lie for the most part.
Right.
about
What's the
stuff.
narrative, Loki? It's a
Yep.
narrative that people push, and it's like the official narrative is these Bigfoot creatures are monkeys,
Oh yeah.
which
Yep.
is patently ridiculous to me, especially someone with my experiences that have shown me that they're not. No monkeys can turn invisible, speak to you telepathically in your own language, depending on who the witness is, completely teleport away from one location, and walk without leaving footprints in the mud, And why is it that if Bigfoot is just a monkey, we cannot find this monkey? Why is this monkey so elusive, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's never been a single carcass or anything recovered.
Right? Not a single bone.
Nothing.
So there's never been anything to me that tells me these things can even die. So, everybody thinks that along the lines of, not everybody, but a lot of people, the Nephilim theory is gaining momentum, and I think it's a good theory to work with. It's because it's out of the box, and whatever these things are, definitely are out of the box and beyond scientific powers to explain. But, the Nephilim, God killed the Nephilim with a flood. So that tells me that the Nephilim can die. We're the dead Bigfoot, right? We're the juveniles that fell into a lake or a river and drowned or whatever. There's no bodies at all to say, hey, these things can be killed and can die. And I know a lot of people that have shot them without any effect at all. So whether Nephilim or not remains to be seen or connected to the Nephilim, but whatever they are, they're not monkeys. And if you believe that they're monkeys and you've spent decades and decades looking into this mystery and come up with the solution or the conclusion that they're monkeys, then I think that you're being a little biased. And
What is it? Because they find orangutan hair places and stuff like that, and that's
Yeah,
what people think.
right.
And
Well,
it's like a big monkey.
right. So it looks like a monkey, and it looks like a man-monkey hybrid is what it looks like. But
Yep.
show me one relic hominid that has any of the abilities that I just mentioned. And we were talking to Tim Coonbo Baker, and he starts telling us how Bigfoot are the most closely related animals to human that there is even closer than the chimpanzee or the gorilla. And I was like, well, Tim, can you tell me how this relic hominid can turn invisible, to the human eye? And this is something that's happened to me twice. So I don't care who laughs at me or who wants to throw rocks at me, whatever, for saying that, because I have to tell the truth. These things can do that. And one of them disappeared completely, was no longer in the area. We searched the area in broad daylight, nothing there. So I asked him what relic hominid, can do that. And he's like, there's never been one, right? There's never been a monkey that can do any of those things. And I don't know, I'm sure this part made it into the final show, but in the end, he was like, well, now that you mention it, I did have something happen to me that I couldn't explain using the relic hominid theory. And
I specifically remember that part.
Right, you remember that,
while I was
Anthony?
editing the episode, because
Right.
it was like he had a breakthrough like while y'all were recording.
Right. He said, well, this thing it weighed like 1,000 pounds, but it ran over a gravel road and never made a sound. And it ran into the trees, into a heavy thicket, but it didn't, force its way through the thicket. It just kind of faded into the thicket without moving a leaf. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, what relic hominid can do that? And he's like, none. So, yeah, a lot more going on here than the official narrative wants you to believe. And I think we need to break that mindset that mindlessly believing everything that you're told. You need to ask questions yourself and search for the answers yourself and come to your own conclusion. Don't believe it because it's officially what you're supposed to believe. Find out for yourself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is very good. How do you say it? Like, it sounds. It's more good. No, that's
More gooder.
it's more gooder this way. No, I think one of the things that's really good about what you have done for the community, Barton, is you're starting to flip, like that name cryptids is being
Yeah.
pulled off of, like, one of our associates, Ken and Lyle,
Yeah.
both. Okay, let's take them two for example. And I guess you could probably throw in David and Weatherly and a few other of our friends that, like, from the
Steve Stockton, yeah.
Steve Stockton. They don't believe that Dogman is a cryptid.
It's not.
They
Neither is
don't.
Bigfoot.
But some of them believe that Bigfoot is. Some of them believe that it's not. But for sure, they don't believe that Dogman is. And one of the things that I can tell you right now, the thing that you've done in bringing the term Inhumanoids to the forefront was very instrumental. And I know Steve, in particular, we had talked, and Steve was like, "That's a good term for that."
Right.
And we had talked about it, and by the way, while I'm on the subject of Steve Stockton, everybody pray for him. He had some blood pressure problems. He was he was trying to get his medication right, and he was gonna be a part of their big bonanza recordings that we'd done, the episodes we dropped, but he couldn't be because of his health. But pray that he gets better. He is a very dear friend of ours.
Yes, he is. And also pray for Linda Godfrey, please.
Linda, I was about to say, Linda.
She really needs the prayer.
For sure. Met some people earlier when we were talking, we went to go eat, and they saw your shirt. They didn't know about my show or anything. But we talked, and when I said, where are you from? The guy said, Wisconsin. I said, oh, that's the land of Dogman. He says, yep, Linda Godfrey. And he started talking about it. So it was pretty cool. And then I met some other people that were at a table, and they were talking about, the guy was talking about the history of Austin, and for a minute there, I got into it with them, talking to them about the underground city of Austin and how, of course, Lucky, you know this, Austin has an underground that goes all the way from downtown up to where the Sears used to be, Hancock Center.
Yep.
And the old city hall was under there, and of course, we got stories from working downtown for years of these little, what they would call duendes in Spanish, or manitos, and they would run around. And we got some really weird stories from bartenders and bouncers and stuff that worked down there over the years that saw these like weird little, inhumanoidal looking creatures running around. A pretty popular story was that this one bartender, I interviewed her. She used to work at Cheers, and she saw one of these things carrying an ice cube. Like, it has a little shirt, had a little ice cube. It was running with it,
Wow.
Like it stole.
I believe in the little people. I really do.
Well, yeah, and you had said that was one of the things that you said that there was proof of it.
Right. I actually found, I just wish I could have retained what I found, but back in the 80s, I found me and my brother found some pygmy flints, and they were so tiny. I had to look at them under a magnifying glass just to appreciate the workmanship, and the pressure flaking and the percussion flaking, the flint napping was so minuscule that it could not have been done by normal-sized human hands. It's just not possible. And the arrowhead that my little brother found fit comfortably on my pinky nail with room to spare. So, yeah, of all the unexplained mysteries that I've looked into and researched through the years, that's the only one that I've really come up with some concrete physical proof that of the reality, of the little people. But so eventually the Pygmy flints were lost. I didn't know what I had really back then. They were merely curiosities, so I put them in a can, and while I was out playing music one weekend, the can was sold to our landlord, and from there, I don't know what happened to them, but I really regret not keeping up with those and knowing what they were when I first found them.
Wow.
Unlike Bigfoot or Dogman, I've yet to come across any concrete physical proof of these Inhumanoids. I know they exist, but in what capacity do they exist? I'm sure that the little people exist in the physical realm. I know that Dogman and Bigfoot exist in the physical realm sometimes, but not always, So anything that can disappear completely from the area, it's
Where did
got to
you
be.
find those arrowheads?
So I found them in Reed, Kentucky, back in the 1980s. Yeah, and I also found a little 2.5, 3-inch footprint right next to the place where my brother found the projectile point. Yeah. The other flint piece I found was a little drill, and it was probably a 1/4 inch long and maybe a, I don't know, 1/16 inch wide. And it was so tiny, I don't even know why I picked it up. I thought it was just a flake of flint, but I picked it up and thought, well, yeah, okay, I'll just keep this. It looks kind of funny, so I put it in my watch pocket. And when I got it home, I remembered that I had it there, so I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, well, this is so tiny, but it looks whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get the magnifying glass out to look at it, and when I did, I seen that it was perfect.
What Indians were in
So we had different kinds, Cherokee and Shawnee mostly. But you had a couple of different
So the
tribes
Shawnee
there.
were probably there
Oh, yeah.
first. and
Yeah,
then-
so they're the ones that kidnapped Daniel Boone 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Cool.
A lot
Have
of
you done any questioning of any of that on the local
well,
people
no,
there?
well, there's actually no Indians left in Kentucky right now.
Oh,
We have the Southern Cherokee Nation, but
yeah,
the
that's
guy's
from
descended
somewhere else,
from the Cherokees, but he looks like you or me.
yeah, yep.
It's not like the
That's the classic
guy
story
in the
right
commercial, the Indian commercial that cries with all the litter.
That guy was from Europe anyway. That
He is,
famous Native
he's not
American
even
guy.
Indian, right?
Yeah,
He's like
yep.
Italian or
Yep,
something like
Italian
that.
gentleman.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but I really regret not keeping those Pygmy flints in a little bit better.
Those are interesting. Little people are very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't forget, folks, let me plug something really quick. Barton is going to be with us via Zoom the day after Halloween, and we're going to have Jessica Jones and Ann Sleen, and we're all going to be here on a Zoom call. Our Halloween is going to be the day after Halloween, which is our Tuesday live stream. So we're going to be doing that, and that's what that's the way it is. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, everybody be sure and tune in.
Dumpster diving Dogman. Thank you for the donation. I know who that is, actually. He revealed himself the other day. It's a very clever name, by the way. There was a question on here. Somebody asked about Loren Coleman. And we both know Loren.
Yeah.
And we've both spoken to him. I've spoken to him several times, but you knew him probably a little long. Well, definitely knew him longer than I have, but you've known him better than me too, I'm sure.
Well, it was because of Loren, only because of Loren that anyone's even seeing me now. Back in, I think it was 85, I got a hold of his Mysterious America book, and that was like the coolest book ever to me. And I thought Loren had to be the coolest guy in the world, to go around the countryside chasing these monsters, and writing it down. It seemed like just the dream job, and that I tried to emulate him, but I was restricted in what I could do in the area that I could cover because I didn't have any money at all. So anything that I've ever accomplished in that field was accomplished in my spare time with zero money. So, yeah, Loren Coleman's a great guy, though. Yeah, really respect him. And to me, Mysterious Kentucky is still the best. I'm not Mysterious Kentucky, but Mysterious America, still the best 40-in book that I've ever read.
I think that when you look at the evolution of our people who, you know, in other words, like let's put it this way, like how my evolution took place in this community. Let's put it that way. I don't mean evolution as in we became from frogs. I'm talking about, you know, how my career has evolved. I got my inspiration from you because your Inhumanoids inspired me,
Right.
you know, to come forward with my story.
Well, I'm happy to.
And
It's an honor.
Honestly, if I hadn't read that, you know, I probably would have just like kept it to myself, and everything that I had collected and worked on may not have come to fruition. I might have just let it sit there. But then when I read your
Yeah.
book, I thought, man, this guy's on the level he's got. And then of course, you know, Loren, you were inspired by Loren.
Yeah.
So when I would have when I've had my conversations with Loren, I always remember I'm kind of like, you know, it's like Loren was, you know, your inspiration
Right.
and you were mine. And I remember, I think I told him that, you know, one of our conversations, and we were working on trying to get him to record too. He's another person. I'm not 100%, but I know that he is not able to travel anymore.
Yeah, he's taking a break now. He told
Yeah.
me.
And so he is not going to be at the Bigfoot conference. He is going to do, I believe, a Zoom
A presentation. Yeah.
I would have
That's
loved
a shame. I
to-
would love to meet him.
Oh yeah, that was like
Yeah.
the main reason why I wanted to go, was
Right.
just so I could meet him there, you know. But folks, my action figure along with Barton's action figure, ours is right there together, and I think Kenny Irish's is right above or below ours.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, in the little case or whatever, I saw it. Yeah, Kenny had taken a picture of it, and Kenny Irish, I wrote the foreword for his second book, and
Yeah, Kenny's a great guy too.
yeah, and so and also I want to give a shout out to you and Ken both for helping me with the interviewing and process of writing my book, and you are in the process of gearing up. I guess you should say we've been preparing.
Yeah.
You're going to help me write my Bigfoot book,
Right.
and Ken is helping me, kind of coaching me and helping me work through it, because I want to write a book that's actually good, not something that just like a piece of garbage. Is I put my name on it, you know.
Right. I wrote
So
a
if
book. Here-
Yeah, I wrote a book, and go check out my podcast. You know, this book is just here because I just wanted to write some crap so I could have something to sign.
Right.
I could sign anything; it doesn't matter. I just, you know, so the book is very important to me. And there are going to be some cases and stories in there that people recognize, and some you may not recognize. I don't think it's going to be the most comprehensive book ever written about this subject, but it is going to be what I think is important. And there are a lot of people who gave me stories for this book that are in this community. I mean, they're
Yeah.
from the community, like Bettina Moss,
Oh, yeah,
Carrie
Betty's
Eaton,
great.
and Nick Valenti. So I mean, you know, I think it's going to be hopefully it'll be a good book, and I think with you consulting and with Ken consulting me, I don't think we can go wrong. And I know that if you look at the future of this field, I think that it's starting to, the wheat is being separated from the chaff, and I'm not.
Finally.
Yeah, and
Right,
I just
after
think that
70
people are
years.
starting to wake up to the reality that, you know, maybe if we don't find something after 40, 50 years, you know, then it's not
You're-
there.
You're
you know what I
looking
mean?
at it the wrong way. It's not that it's not there. It's that you're
Well, it's
you're
not there
conducting
in
your
the, in
search
the,
the
physi- in
wrong
the
way.
Yeah, you're right.
You're looking in the wrong
exactly.
direction.
That's right.
Yeah. These
Mm-hmm.
things are definitely there, and
They're there, but it's not in the
not what
sense
people
that they
think they
it
are,
is.
yeah.
You're not going to find bones. I just
No.
don't. And we still to this day, you know, don't have any tangible physical proof that says, hey, you know, these things are there.
right,
Yeah.
they're not Gigantopithecus blackie descendants. So Gigantopithecus blackie was a 10-foot tall ape, right? But it had no special abilities other than being huge and heavy and hungry all the time, right? That's the only. It had no abilities that certainly that anyone would call supernatural, like these things today do. And I know that they do because I've experienced it myself repeatedly. So if you want to come and debate me, I'm open for debate to anybody. You know, if you want to debate my experience with your opinion, then go right ahead. We can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's going to happen as we go further and further into the future is that it's I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is I'm gonna prognosticate, I guess. How do you say it? I'm gonna predict. I think that eventually it's going to get to where it's going to become more and more mainstream, and it's going to become more and more. I don't want to use the word fashionable, but it's going to become more fashionable to believe in the way that we believe. And I don't mean like in like a bad way. I mean like people are following the crowd. I think that it's going to become, because it's going to be going counterculture to what's been happening.
Right.
And I think that that's going to look more attractive to people, because people, when everybody's following the same narrative, eventually the pendulum is going to swing back the other way, and people want to be on the side that's the cutting edge, the whatever. And so, I think some of these people are sincere, but I think some of them are just jumping ship because they want to be on the winning team or whatever you want to call it. But I don't look at it like that. And I've had people say that to me recently. I had a couple people telling me, I'm on your team, I'm on your side. I believe like this, I believe like that. And I look at it kind of like what Ken was saying. Like, he has a certain way he believes, but he's not hostile toward other people's beliefs.
Right.
But if I was treated the way that him and a couple of other colleagues have been treated by these other people,
these intellectual.
yeah, I would just be. I mean, I don't know. I'd be fighting mad. But the fact that they are able to contain themselves and reel themselves in and not lash out like you and I would,
Right, shows real
it
constraint.
speaks volumes.
I've already lashed out,
character.
and I know exactly who you're talking about, and I've already lashed out.
Yeah,
years
that
ago,
little
and that
twerp,
was the
saying
past.
things, and then this Whitmore guy, talking to me about, oh, you don't know what you're up against. Like, well,
Yeah.
it's like I'm Bitcoin or something, dude. I'm going against the global banks, dude. It's isn't a war. It's
the truth.
how you believe in Bigfoot versus how I believe in Bigfoot. This isn't a war, dude. Okay,
It's not. Yeah.
this isn't the North versus the South, dude. Right?
So you can always tolerate other people's opinion, but when it comes down to it, it's the truth versus the official narrative. That's what the fight is. And like I say, I'll debate anyone. If you think that science can explain Bigfoot or Dogman, if you think that they're evolutionary products of something, I don't know how you could even say that with a straight face, but I'm open for debate, and I've already debated, every intellectual Nazi out there. Really.
Well, let me say this. Dick Richards just said, if Gigantopithecus isn't a Bigfoot fossil, I'm a monkey's uncle. What do you think of that? What do you think of that?
I guess he's a monkey's uncle.
Dick,
It's not. Bigfoot is not a monkey.
come on, Dick. Dick, you've been on my show.
Bigfoot is not a monkey, Dick.
I think West Coast Dogman Project says it good. He says, have to keep an open mind to everything until proven fact. Yeah, you're right.
Right. So Gigantopithecus mostly is reconstructed from a few fossil teeth found in China.
Yeah, and
So you're extrapolating a lot.
Gigantopithecus-
You're putting a lot on a Gigantopithecus blackie's shoulders to say that these things can be found in every country in the world,
It could look
which
like
they
a
are.
fish.
Right?
you don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, so Gigantopithecus blackie was not, the fossilized remains were not found in every country in the world. I think just China.
Yeah, not here
So
in the
how
United
did-
States.
you
There's
know-
no grade A fossil record here at all.
Right. So
None.
how in the world did these things get so widespread? Gigantopithecus blackie certainly wasn't so widespread. So yeah.
And Dick, I think he's. Are you trolling us, man? Because I see what he says. He's, I didn't say that. I'm saying I don't believe in the fossil records. Yeah, see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right, Dick. Yeah.
Dick, he's been on my show. And,
Yeah.
and I know his view is very much, it runs opposite of what he just said. So I think he's
Yeah.
he's messing with us. Okay, Tricky Dick, I get what you're saying, dude. You're messing with us here.
Well, that's my opinion on it, and a lot of people don't agree with it, and I understand that. And that's the way it's been since 1975 when all this stuff happened to us. So I don't expect everyone to agree with me.
There's another one. Dumpster diving Dogman says Barton debate Ron Moorhead. But Ron, don't Ron and you have very similar
Ron
views.
is completely on my side.
Yeah.
And
That's
who
not a
was that
debate.
dumpster diving Dogman? You'd be surprised at how many people that you think believe in the Gigantopithecus blackie or monkey theory that have experiences that go totally against that, and they don't really believe that. I have a lot of my friends that people think they're apers, as we call them, but they're really not, because they have experiences that run contrary to that theory. So but they won't come out and say it because they're scared of the retaliation. I don't know why. Why in the world would you be scared of what someone else thought of you? You know, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you lay down in your bed, and these people online, you know, they're not even really real in a sense that they affect your life. So why you'd be scared of what someone thinks of you, I don't know. I don't understand that mindset, but a lot of people are like that. They don't want to be ridiculed or whatever. And so someone like me, it's just been happening since 1975. So I got some pretty thick skin, so you can't bother me like that.
Some people have gone too far to where they have to be, you know, take that stand.
Right.
You know, the hill they're on it.
Yeah, and I think
On
it's
that kind of
based
thing.
on a need to be popular, because that's the most popular opinion, is that Bigfoot is a monkey, even though it's completely ludicrous and answers nothing. It does not answer a single question, in my mind, as to what these things are, how they got here, and where they're from, how they can do what they do. So it's just totally ridiculous to me, and that's been my opinion always, and always will be, unless someone can come up with a dead body or something like that that can prove me wrong. Then I'll happily admit that I was wrong, and that Bigfoot can turn invisible and disappear and still be killed. But until then, anybody tells me that they've killed a Bigfoot, I'm like, where's the body? Where's the bones? Did you not have enough foresight to just cut off a finger? So far, no one has.
China pays well. That stuff is gone instantly.
Right?
Yeah. It says here, L.M. Marzulli, Tim Alberino, and Stephen Quell are great on these topics. Yeah, I don't know who Tim Alberino is, but I know the other two. And then Bernard Fox says, if they found dinosaur bones, they should have found a Bigfoot skeleton by now. He
Right.
says, I'm with BMR on Bigfoot. I think he said one turned into a tree. Yeah, you're talking about Bigfoot Michigan Rob.
Yeah.
We interviewed Rob. And give the folks here your opinion, which you had talked about. I think you talked about it on the show, maybe it was off air with Rob when we interviewed with Rob. And one of the things you talked about was because his girlfriend was killed.
Right.
Now I don't know if you've heard the story, Loki, but I'll bring you up to speed. Like they had this loud roar.
Mm-hmm.
She said it felt like it went through her body.
Yeah.
And then a month later she died. But Barton has a theory that these things are radioactive.
Right.
Talk about that.
Bigfoot Michigan Rob and thousands and thousands of other people think that the infrasound is what they're using to cause all these adverse effects in people. But infrasound really is not capable of doing that. You know, it's been studied before. A lot of people are not familiar with that. But it certainly can't kill anyone. And, Rob was there and his girlfriend was there in a boat, and this thing screamed at him.
And
Well,
it screamed, or
it
sent
screamed
like a
and actually,
telepathic
no, it
thing?
screamed and she fell out of the boat.
Physical
And,
scream.
Yeah, he had to fish her up out of the lake they were in up there in Michigan. And so, like you say, Wolf, a month later she died, but Rob didn't suffer any effects from that. So if it was infrasound, you'd think it would have affected both of them the same way, right? But to me, I think it's much more plausible that they're radioactive in some way, and that would explain why the animals that they kill and do not eat, which is totally against any omnivore's dietary needs. You'd have to, especially if you were 10 foot tall and weigh 1,000 pounds, right? You have to spend all your time taking care of your caloric needs just to keep that bulk going. But these things, they only seem to be interested in the eyeballs, tongues, and entrails. They left the meat there, and all the animals that were killed, none of them were predated on. The scavengers wouldn't eat, the turkey vultures wouldn't eat them. The flies wouldn't even land on these things. So they just laid there in our fields and stuff for months and months and months. They finally started to rot away. And I think the radioactive theory is much more sound than the infrasound theory. So, and actually Tim Coombo Baker's the one that came up with that. Did you know that, Wolf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy that nothing messed with them, like bugs made them start deteriorating.
No, not even a fly.
So what happened eventually?
Well,
They
eventually
dehydrated.
they just desiccated, dried up, and blew away. But it took months and months and months, and we would
That's
get on the
weird.
school bus every day, twice a day, and see these dog carcasses that this creature had killed and brought up to our farm. And so, yeah, so I think the radioactive theories much.
Well,
much more sound.
somebody had pointed out that she died of a heart attack. I mean, you know, and Rob, you know, he's talked about this whole thing.
Yeah, that's possible too. Yeah.
But I mean, just because you die of a heart attack doesn't mean that it couldn't be something that was like what you were saying, radioactive.
Right, it's possible that
Because radiation
Bigfoot didn't have
can-
anything to do with her death, and she
Well-
just stressed out until finally it got too much for her. But as far as the paralyzing effects and the fight or flight, and you get sick and all this stuff, it seems to be more in line with you know, that these things might be radioactive, other than
Well,
using some kind of infrasound like a tiger when it roars, you know, or an elephant.
I mean, think of this though. Like when you get cancer, if you get cancer, which is radiation causes cancer, but radiation because it also kills cells.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. It's like a dual-edged sword. It can use it to kill cancer, but it can also cause it.
Right.
But and it's just like when you take certain types of medication, it's like, oh, this gets rid of anxiety, but then if you take too much, it could cause it. But these things, they actually can literally cause. Radiation can do a lot of things to your body, and it could cause your organs to fail, for things to it could destroy ventricles in your heart
Right.
Yeah.
and cause a heart attack.
Cause a
Made
heart
it so
attack,
thin,
right?
and then
Yeah.
he just had a 30-day.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, yeah, and you're up. Your time is up, and it's horrible. And Rob, you know, we're not talking. And I know Rob. I think he's in the chat. We're not talking
Yeah,
willy
hi,
nilly
Rob.
about the death of your ex girlfriend. Believe me, trust me, we're not taking it lightly
No,
at all.
Definitely not.
We talked about this. We're serious, and I'm not going to say this is not a joke, but we're serious, dude. It's not, you know, like I'm not joking. We're being serious here.
Right.
This is a very serious subject, but this person's
Especially when someone loses their life.
loved one
you know.
was killed, you know, and whenever I hear this narrative of like these peaceful forest giants, I'm like, where is this at? Whenever somebody tells me this, it's always like a crazy cat person, like cat lady or somebody. It's like, yeah, and I feed them and I give them meow mix and they all dance around and sometimes we trip on mushrooms together and and next thing you know, the Smurfs show up and we all hang out with Gargamel and then, you know, we fly off in Darth Vader's spaceship and you're like, dude, you're full of crap.
Right.
Like where is this happening? Because most of the people that I get stories from, I mean, you know, they're not feeding these things. They're terrified.
Yeah.
They're being terrorized by these creatures. Now, I had somebody accuse me the other day, and he was she was very adamant. She was like, well, one of the things you do, Josh Turner, is you get on there and you sensationalize all the bad stuff about Bigfoot, and you don't talk about all the good stuff. And I said, you tell me where the good stuff is at,
Yeah,
and don't
so
give me
good.
this crap about you dropping acid with them and running around naked in the woods of Washington. I'm talking about
I'd like
real...
to see it, but
Yeah.
teddy bear picnic.
the teddy bear picnic.
And another one
The
we
Ewok
have-
village, right? It's the Ewok
Another
village.
witness testimony we have is Martin Groves. His partner, they were exposed
Oh,
to
yeah.
whatever these things throw out. I'm thinking radiation, and he didn't recover at all, and eventually died from being there with Martin. So,
Well,
know, it's
and
something we
his
have to-
story, look at his story, Barton. Like, I don't know if you know his story, Loki. We had it on, you watched the live a lot, but Martin talked on the show, and he told this story at the conference in front of 430 people, and everybody
Yeah.
just fell deathly silent when he was talking. It was the only person that spoke, including myself, where nobody said a word. Everybody was just deathly quiet. And he got up there as a former law enforcement officer, and he said, this is what happened. And he said, these two Bigfoot called this Dogman out to kill this man.
and his partner.
And and that it was a bow hunter. And he said he heard that loud
Well, the
clanging
bowhunter
noise.
actually did get killed.
The bow hunter was killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you hear about that loud clanging noise in the woods, that's another thing that I've had a witness recently. He said he was saying, well, when I heard about the clanging noise that he heard, he goes, I heard that up
metallic.
near the Brown. He said near Brown Springs, I think, and I need, you know, we'll see Tex at the conference up there in Jefferson, and we need to sit down with Tex and talk to him. Let him tell you about Brown Springs.
Yeah.
He said that he heard this clanging noises up there. And Brown Springs is in Oklahoma, right? And now one of the guys that me and Scorpion made friends with is a tribal cop up there, tribal police. I don't say cop; they don't call him that. but he's a tribal police officer, and he says he's been in the woods and he's heard that. It sounds like two metal doors slamming
Right.
shut or opening, like, or, and then he'll hear noises. And then one time he was on horseback, and he said he was near the Red River and he had gone for a ride, and he had gone kind of far afield, and so he said, you know what, I'm just going to camp down here. And he heard that loud creaking, clanging noise, and his horse got so freaked out that it threw him off, and it just started running across the river and wanted to be a Texan.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean,
So, I mean, what is
Betty
that
heard
loud
that
clanking
too.
noise? I
Yeah.
mean,
I think
one
it's
of the-
underground. I think it's doors
yes,
opening.
absolutely.
That's
Because
my
one of
theory.
the theories, yeah, you're right. Because the theory is that they're releasing these things.
Yeah.
And Jessica, she actually remote viewed it, and she said these things are coming out to feed. That these
From
people
underground
are
tunnels.
allowing them to come
Yeah.
out, and they do eat human flesh and drink human blood.
Sure.
And when you had mentioned to one of the people we were talking to, I think it was Abe Cius, and you said, what do they want? And you said their blood. He said
Right.
their soul, your soul. Well, the blood is the life.
Right. The
you know?
life is in and soul's in the blood, and
Yeah.
all these supernatural entities seem to be highly interested in blood above all other things.
What is it
So,
with
yeah.
iron? So, like, when you tell me the loud noise, I think of like some iron clanging, and like fence lines. Those are always barbed wire and iron and stuff that usually will keep stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like blacksmiths back in the day would use, the iron,
Horseshoes.
yeah, the iron was always used to like spiritually
Yeah,
block
ward
stuff
off
and
the
stuff
evil
like
spirits. Yeah.
Maybe it was like some kind of something, or some big iron battle or something crazy
Mm-hmm.
to think about. Like when you hear something like that, like a godly sound, like a noise with
Yeah.
metal, it's kind of weird, because what metal represents and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
on
The
different levels.
purification,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, when you're talking about that, there's a book called Dark Fairies, and I read it. Anthony read it, and we kind of compared notes, and we read a lot of the same books. And Anthony's very scholarly in his views on these things, and this isn't like a subject that he looks at this subject just like he would history or science or any other.
Right.
It's not even a passion of his. He just likes to read, and so. We read the same book, and one of the things we compared notes, and we talked about having these swords all over the house, and then putting swords up based
Now you're
on.
talking my language, brother.
Yeah, we hung two scimitars up above my door. We didn't have in the old place. And Loki, you remember the old place? It
Yeah,
had
yeah.
that big cedar pillar. We had the horseshoe, and then we had the swords, but we didn't have it above our door. Now, I know you know Bandar. Okay. Well, anyway, his brother was telling me one day, we were sitting outside the club talking. He's a Lebanese, he's Arabic, right? And he said, this goes back to Arab beliefs, pre-Muslim, pre-Islam. They were Phoenician people, and they said that we believe that you hang a sword above the entryways, and it will keep out the jinn. But that's the same thing with the fairies.
Yeah.
They would use a horseshoe to keep out the dark energy of the dark fairies of the unseelie court,
Right.
which is the unclean fairies. And they did make a distinction. The people of the British and Ireland, of the Isles there, they made a distinction, and it's a little different. The British Isles, they each have their own little area. Like I was talking to a guy from Wales, and he had this own little thought, his son, he said, had kicked over a fairy mound. And he immediately got stung by a bunch of ants.
Yeah.
So I told him, Griffin, I said, I think he actually was just kicking over an ant mound and he got stung by ants. And he goes, no,
Fire
man.
ants.
No.
He's like, oh no, it was fairies. They came out and they attacked him through the ants. It was very bad. And I was like, oh, okay. He's a friend of mine. I like him. But I was like, okay, you want to believe that that's what it
Yeah.
was. It could be a very common sense thing. But he said something very interesting. He says, dude, he goes, I took a magnet and I swept it over his leg. He goes, and the magnet shot off into the ant mound. That's what he said. It pulled it from his hand, and then the ants all went back into the earth.
Well, that's strange.
That's where it took a weird turn. And then I
Yeah.
told him, I said, okay, so you were on acid. And no, I didn't. That's horrible. I didn't
Bugs
say
are
that.
attracted to energy.
Yeah, they are attracted to energy, and energy can change their
Yeah.
direction.
Everything's attracted to energy, not
Yeah.
just bugs. Like people and everything. That's why we live where we live and
Yeah,
do
exactly.
what we do.
Exactly. Let me ask you a question, Luke, because you actually have built houses and worked on houses and
Yeah.
done all kinds of stuff. And I know you're working with Todd, who's a
Yeah.
good friend of ours from back in the day.
Yep.
And when you were doing those remodels and doing all that, did you ever have anything weird happen, or did you feel like anything?
No, I get stuck like when you do a demo work and you pull a wall off and then there's like newspaper behind it. It's like going through somebody's house when they've passed away and you read a book. You're like, oh, look at this book. You get stuck there instead of working. You're like reading through the book and, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. I experienced that. And I saw like a newspaper article on a wall and I was like there. But why? And then I started going around and nothing else. There was no newspaper everywhere. It was just that section of the wall had that. So I was like, that's kind of weird. And that's about it on that kind of deal.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Like it was like a shrine to something that had happened on there.
Yeah.
But nothing I read was very specific towards anything.
Kind of like a time capsule.
Yeah, if it was been like somebody died on this date or an obituary, it might hold something to me, but it was just that. But it doesn't change the fact that it was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been a code for somebody from the future or something.
Telling you to go find $1 million out in the backyard.
Could have been anything.
Yeah.
But I just think about stuff like that when I was doing it. But I never, because I don't know. You just when you're doing a lot of the work I did was demo, so you're like getting rid of stuff like that. And when I worked with Todd and stuff, we would do like some sage burns and stuff like that. So, and he has good energy, so. I think that kind of stuff.
So Todd was doing the sage burn?
Yeah, we would hang out.
Well, that speaks volumes because Todd's one of the smartest people out. He's a smart guy.
Yep.
I remember him and Willie installed my stereo system in my Chevy years ago, and Todd was like, dude, he had a weird experience in my house too. He went out there and he was working on it, and he said, dude, your Chevy is just, it's given, it was an Alpine. Remember that? Back then, it was like if you had like a 15 disc changer or something, you were like, it was pimp.
Yeah.
You were pimped out. You were like, dude, this is, it was back in like 1999 or 2000 or something. It was probably 2000. Yeah. And he was like, dude, this vehicle, and Todd was good with that. So was Willie.
Yeah.
They were very, analytical people, and he was like, dude, I'm having a hell of a time trying to get this thing wired. And I just remember like Willie and him talking and hanging out, and Willie was telling him my house was haunted, and them kind of making a joke about maybe the spirit was messing with the truck or whatever. And Todd took it seriously. Like, he didn't laugh it off. When I came outside, it was already getting dark, and he was like, I'm going to ask you a question. I want an honest answer. He's like, is your house haunted? And I was like, yeah. And I thought, oh no, don't tell me this guy, Willie's been here talking to this guy. He's going to take off and leave my truck like halfway done, And Todd was like, because I thought I saw something like in the window, like moving around, and then you were out. You had just come outside, and at that point there was nothing but us three there because Chief had gone to the store to probably eat or something. I don't know. So he took off. He was always bailing. It was like, oh, time to do stuff, and he'd take off, And so we were left there to kind of do what we were doing, and he took it serious. Like he was not joking around about it, so it doesn't surprise me that he would sage or whatever. And he's a pretty smart guy. I once had a conversation with Todd too about quantum physics, and this was like you said, like this is early 2000s, and we were outside the club or whatever. And even when he was drinking, he's one of those people that doesn't want to lose control. Like he's not like a person that's gonna get smashed and be like, yeah, I'm gonna fall over the place.
Yeah, not like that.
He keeps himself very grounded. So while all of your friends like Kale and Marshall and everybody were kind of smashed, and of course your brother who ended up throwing up in the back of Chief's truck. They were all like hammered, but he was still kind of like had his faculties, and I was like that too. I didn't let myself I would get drunk, but not because I was always getting into fights. And so I went over there and I was talking to Todd, and we were outside, and he's like, dude, I would like to explore this further with your house or whatever, And I was like, well, feel free to come over. And you can explore it all you want. I don't really care. If you can get rid of it and it'll go with you, that's even a bonus, And so Todd was very like poignant about, no, he seemed like he was kind of perturbed by the idea of that. He goes, I'd be willing to talk about it, but I don't think I should go there, And I said, okay. And he didn't go back inside after what he thought he had seen. So he was pretty smart about that. Now, here's a weird thing that happened years ago. Logie used to, I'm telling you, Bart, because Logie and Anthony's heard this story, and so has everybody. But Logie lived with Chief and Chief's uncle at one time in a double wide trailer house, and it was actually a pretty decent place, and it was pretty quiet, whatever. But I remember heading over there one night, and we were going to hang out, and a bunch of friends came over, whatever. And I got in the truck, and I'll never forget, I felt like there was something in the truck with me. To this day, it gives me the chills, and my hair kept like. When you have these static electricity, and it kept like going up onto the top of the truck, And I just kept thinking there's something in this truck with me. So when we got to you guys' place, the next day when I left, because I ended up crashing out there or whatever, and I ended up talking to Chief and his uncle like maybe a week later. He was talking about his Kachina dolls falling off the shelves. And that one time he saw, you had that curl bar in your room.
Mm-hmm.
He said that it rolled out of your room and turned kind of sideways. And so his uncle kind of jokingly, we were at the bar, we were shooting pool. I don't shoot pool, but he was shooting pool. We were all hanging out. And actually Alex's dad, I think, was there. We were all there. And Tony's stepdad. And we were hanging out at Clicks. Remember Clicks?
Yep.
And so I remember the conversation coming, the waitress saying, "Oh, there's some weird thing. One of the glasses shook on the deal." And they were saying, "Oh, this place is haunted." Shoot, we worked in a place where it was haunted as hell over there. Everything. Roxy, you go there in the daytime, you hear pool balls clicking like people are talking and playing pool. You could hear it.
It's like closed up, and you just did a security sweep, and there's nobody up
and there's
there.
nobody up there. And then there were times when we were getting ready to leave, and we would hear that. So then we would figure out which bouncer was going to have to take his ass up there and
The
figure.
new guy.
We'd pick the new guy. We'd be like, "Your turn to go up there and check out what's going on up there."
You would sit around and you go, "Oh, you heard that?
You heard?
It's your turn. Your turn to go check that."
Yeah. So we were talking to this lady at Clicks about it or whatever, and Chief's uncle goes, "You brought a ghost to my house," and I'll never forget that. And I was like, "Dude, I really thought that there was something in my truck." And so when I was walking out of the house, I remember you had that deck.
Mm-hmm.
So this really happened. I was walking out of and I turned around and I told whatever it was, I said, "Stay. Do not follow me." And I said, "In the name of Jesus, do not follow me." Now, what I should have said was, "Do not go back in y'all's house." But I honestly feel like something followed me from that place into y'all's place, but it didn't stop the activity at my house, because what I later found out, and I didn't understand this at the time, but there was a vortex that was coming out of that mirror. And of course, that was before I met David Soto, and David had said, "Look, you have a vortex there." And I said, "Oh, like a portal?" He goes, "No." He goes, "It's not like a portal. A portal is like one way in, one way out, and it's gone."
Doorway.
He said, "This thing is a vortex. A vortex is like a super highway of paranormal entities." He said, "There's no telling what could come in and out of that thing." He's like, "You might look up and see an alien standing there, what looks like an alien." And I told him I'd never seen anything like that in that house. But I told him, I said, "There's definitely something there." And he says that, so I asked him years later, I asked him about what had happened with you guys, having the weird paranormal stuff happen after I'd gone over there. He said it's very possible that I had an attachment and that it followed me over there, but it knew that it wanted to go to you guys.
Yeah.
So you guys, having been in my house,
Familiar.
y'all were familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt comfortable going to you guys and latching on to whatever was going on at y'all's place.
It liked what it tasted.
Yeah. So that's what David said. He's like, it's very possible that thing hitched a ride knowingly.
Hitchhiker, yeah.
Yeah. And so it basically got off, and when maybe it tried to follow you out and then it decided not to on its own, or maybe your rebuking of it, turned it away, and it ended up at your house. And then you guys started having weird paranormal activity.
And I had that shaman doll that you put it up on the wall, and this is like like a wooden carve that we got from, I don't know where my mom got it. I got it at an antique store where this guy used to have an antique store in Austin, like in the early 80s. And she bought a bunch of stuff from him, like a going out of business sale, but then it never went out of business. It's like the first one ever, And so like this thing, and I always had like an attachment to it. Like I would take it from my mom's cabinetry and take it in my room and stuff. I keep it in my closet. And then when I moved out when I was 18, I took it with me, and it would walk. Like you could put it on the table and it would go and walk across thing. Like you put it on a bookshelf and people come over, and then it decides to come alive. Like, and then it would fall off, and you're like, "Man, y'all stop wiggling the house." And they're like, "No, nothing else moved up there. There was like a ball up there that didn't move, but that thing walked off." But yeah, I still have that thing too. I'll let you take a look at it. It's weird.
That's crazy. I think you told me about that.
It fell off and broke itself one time, and I think like all the shenanigans stopped that it was doing after that. But I still have it, and
that's
like
crazy.
The little helmet that it has broke,
yeah,
but it just freed itself, is what I always tell everybody.
I used to
Like
have a little
someone's in
Kachina doll, man, and it had the little head. I got it at the Navajo reservation, and the little head you could pull off the head, and it would just be like a normal person's head, and then you put it back on, and it was like a buffalo head. And I would find it with the head, like the helmet or whatever it is, off of it. And I found it like that 2 or 3 times. I threw it in the trash. I was like, I'm
Yeah,
done with
I
this
don't
thing.
blame you.
I'm not gonna,
Right.
And one of the ladies, their little girl was working there. It was not a little girl, but like she was like a teenager. So to me, she was a kid or whatever. But she was like, she goes, that sometimes people have problems with these things. Like, cause I made a
Yeah.
joke about it. I said, are these things haunted? And she goes, they can be. And it just depends. She goes, but they were made by somebody who's with good energy. That it's fine. But they can be made by something that's not, that has bad energy, and like an evil shaman, a shapeshifter. That's what that is.
Right.
Is a skinwalker, basically. So one of the things that I noticed about these incidents or whatever, they don't need to have an electricity source either. And like one thing I noticed, there's 2 of me now. One thing I noticed about the Furbies. Y'all remember Furbies?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we were talking about that. Well, was that this morning, Alec? We were talking about the Furbies. Yeah, and I think it was this morning. And Anthony, when he was a kid, he wanted one of those things so bad. Like he just had to have one. And Anthony was a weird kid anyway, and so I was just like, okay, he wants a Furby. So he had to have a Furby. Yeah, how old were you at that time? You were a kid though. You were little.
Yeah, I think I was like 9, 8 or 9.
Mm.
Because like the Furbies.
Did
were,
you get your Furby?
Yeah.
He
What'd
did.
you- what'd you
Yeah,
name him?
I'm glad you did.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
I feel like he got that Furby. If he wanted it, he got it. I'm pretty sure he got that.
Well, he
I think
wanted
it was
one
Furbies.
Yeah.
because my mother would
They're like
spoil
a
him.
gremlin. It looks just like the
Mhm.
one from Gremlins.
Yeah, kind of like a magpie,
looked
but with a little
just like
beak
that.
or
Yep.
something. And so what ended up happening was, I'll tell you, this story is really creepy. My mother had an office, and she was a business manager, and then she was a tax accountant. She was very math. Her and my dad are math whizzes, both very, very intelligent. And do you need me to move or something? Is there going to be 2 of me for the rest of the show? Wow, because I like having 2 of me. That's awesome. I could get twice the work done and do twice the griping.
Right.
The listeners can't see it.
Well, okay, on my screen, there's 2 of us now.
So you're
And
wasting time talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. It's good. It's a good look for me. But what's crazy is like, okay, so Anthony had this Furby obsession, and so here's a weird thing. And I've never told this story on the show. And I'll tell you why, because my mother, it always freaked her out. Now, she died last year, and I wanted to tell this story on Halloween this year. But I got so many stories to talk about, and it's not like we're going to run out of material. But I'll tell you this one, okay? There was a Furby that she had gotten for Anthony, and his birthday is a few days before Christmas. Well, unbeknownst to me, it was in the house, and I was sitting there in her study. She had an office, a study, whatever, and I shared it with her. So I'd go over there, and I liked it. It was like it was a nice, decent. It was bigger than this room by a mile, and it was a nice spot. And she had the computer there, and then there was a TV right up in the corner, so you could watch TV, and you could do your work on the computer, and I could make schedules and whatever. So I was in there, and I heard, I heard this noise. You know how they make that noise,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what the heck is that? And I hadn't heard that before. I just remember him asking for this Furby, and I was like, don't get him that. It looked like a goofy thing or whatever. But my sister was like, no, Mijo wants a Furby. So my mom got him one. And so I get up and I kind of walk around the room and I'm looking for it. And then I go into my Uncle Jaime. He lived with my mom at that time. I knocked on his door. And I'll be real honest, I was freaked out. So I was going to kind of use him to go back into the office to be the, in case something jumped out at us. I mean, he could take the brunt of it. I don't know. Anyway, I knocked on his door and I said, hey, man, I'm hearing something. And so he followed me out and I kind of I shoved him in there. I said, get him. Nah. Anyway, I walked and I said, I hear something going on in here. And so he heard it too. He sat there for a few minutes and we started talking. Then the next thing you know, we're just talking about stuff. And I sat back down behind the computer, and then right when he was walking off, it did it again. He turned around, and I stood up, and we looked around, and we couldn't find it. So I was in the hallway. I heard it again. So then we go back into so we start digging around, and my mom had hid it in the bookshelf because she didn't want Anthony to find it because it was for his birthday, which was December 19th. And so I told my mom, I said, that thing is going off all the time, So one day, a couple days later, it was maybe a week before his birthday, she was in there And I'd called her to see how she was doing. I said, "Mom, how you doing?" Well, we started talking. So I'm okay, mijo. She goes, "This damn Furby thing keeps going off." She goes, "I'm gonna take the batteries out of it." So I go over there to visit her a couple nights later, and it was like maybe 2 or 3 days before his birthday, whatever. And I go over there, and the thing started doing that. It started going off, whatever, you know. And so I walked
a
over
battery?
there. Huh?
Without a battery in it?
Yeah. So I
wow.
found it sideways in the bookshelf, and I pulled it out, and I shook it, and I looked at it, and I opened it. There were no batteries in it.
The capacitor was full, right? With the energy before the.
Well, they
battery?
said that, they say that and one of the theories they had with that and the Teddy Ruxpin, and it's called Ruxpin, Letitia, not Ruspikin. But anyway, they said that these things, I mean, it was such a stupid thing. They said that, oh, well, they can keep a little bit of their energy inside of them, and then they can do. I was like, yeah, but this thing was doing it for 2 days after the batteries had been removed. That's nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. And so it freaked me out so bad. I was like, dude, this is not cool. And then my wife's sister had 2 of them, and they did the same thing. And she said, take the batteries out, and she did, and they kept doing it. Same thing with Teddy Ruxpin. There was a Teddy Ruxpin, and I have a story when I was a kid about that. And this Teddy Ruxpin would start playing in the middle of the night, and it would be like a recording, and it was supposed to be. Now, here's another thing, though. There's a Mandela effect involved in the Teddy Ruxpin. There is now, which I don't remember this, but there was like a caterpillar.
I had that. I have it still. It glows in the dark.
The caterpillar
Glowworm
one?
thing?
The glowworm? Okay, I don't remember that. Because but I didn't have one.
I think I have it still.
See, but you also remember South America being moved way over to the right, so you could be from the different timeline. I don't know. I don't remember that. But you remember we had that conversation? You were like, South America's always been over there. I was like, no, it hasn't. And I'm like, which Loki are you in the timeline here?
I remember specifically because of that, where the Gulf is. And then, you know, they say that there was like a huge asteroid hit right there in the Gulf. So that's where I get my alignment for the States. And that's when I think back, and that's where my side comes from on that.
So are we both on camera now, me and them? Oh, okay, I was just wondering because it looks terrible. But I was gonna say, there's this weird thing associated with this. Not the Furby, just the Furby, but the Teddy Ruxpin. I don't remember the
How
glowworm.
do you remember my view on freaking South America?
Because you told
That
me.
was like a year ago.
It was like 3 years ago. But
Exactly, like this.
dude, my mind is like a steel trap, bro. You know that. Something comes in my mind, it stays. If I commit it to memory, it's gonna stay there.
I know where you stand on South America.
Yeah, I know. You told me because you
Continentally.
continentally, yeah, absolutely. I remember, and like me and Barton talked about memorization earlier, and how I go through memorization, what I do.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening with this Teddy Ruxpin, I was at a friend's house, and my friend Hunter kept playing with it, messing with it, and going, because my friend's house supposedly was haunted, my friend Ronnie, and he was like, my friend, your house is haunted, and we're messing with him. And so my friend Tommy had a spirit, I'll tell that story one day, from his swimming pool, because a kid had drowned in his swimming pool. And unbeknownst to us, we were getting grabbed, our legs would get grabbed in the pool. And I don't know if I've talked about this on the show or not, but it was so weird. So this Teddy Ruxpin thing was even weirder because I was laying there one day, and we were like at my friend's house. It was 3 or 4 of us, and it was we were having a sleepover, and we went there on a Friday, and we were leaving on Sunday, and we all went to the same church school. It was like a Christian Science Academy, a Becca school, and I was laying there, and the other kids were moving something out of the room. And so I was, and there wasn't enough room for all of us to be in there. So a couple of us were laying there on the bean bags, and we were watching DuckTales. I don't know if anybody remembers DuckTales. As I'm there watching DuckTales, I love that show.
Classic.
Yeah. And I hear something behind me, which sounded like the Teddy Ruxpin, and I was like, why is it going off behind me? So I figured my friend's little brother, Mikey, who would have been about 7 years old, I was like 10 or something, put it behind me. So I kind of went like, what are you doing, Mikey? I thought it was him, and I look, and it was like, there's no Teddy Rux. There's nothing there. But I heard it talking to me behind me, and I was like, what the heck? And it had like those pre-recorded statements or whatever it would make.
you.
Yeah, I love you. Yeah. And so you turn around, and
Play
you're like,
with me, Wolf. Come
Yeah.
play with me.
well, it said something, behind me, it like the DuckTales theme had come on, and I heard it, when it says DuckTales, woo, whatever. I heard it say that. but it was Teddy Ruxpin saying it, and I thought, what in the heck is going on here? This sounds freaking totally weird. So I turn around, and I said, that's no biggie, whatever. Well, here's what's really weird. There was a guy that lived in that house, and the reason that his dad bought that house was because it had a walk-in freezer. The guy had built a walk-in freezer in the house. His dad was a butcher. And so whenever he bought the house, this is what his dad, we went camping one time, and we were all part of the, what do you call it, the Boy Scout, Cub Scouts, whatever. It was like I forgot what it was called. It was like a Christian camp or whatever, but they had a name for it, like Little Cubs Campers or some crap. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, it was basically our hillbilly dads out there telling us, hey kids, let's go shoot at stuff, okay? Because you're not supposed to, but it's you can do that because you're in Texas and you're 10. So here's a gun. Yeah. So we were out there doing. Yeah, I mean it was no big deal. We were out there. So then they're like, hey, let's tell ghost stories. So when his dad started telling his ghost story, he said he goes, well, I'll tell you a creepy story. When I first moved into that house, he goes, there were meat hooks hanging in that walk-in freezer, which isn't unusual. I mean, if you're a person who has a walk-in freezer and you store deer carcasses in there, because it was like right there where the garage part of it was sectioned off, and it was like another little room, and it gave me the creeps. I mean, you can see it on camera. Probably my hair stand on my arms, like you can see it. So when I think about it, and I walk by there and I'd hear those the like what I thought were hooks clinging together, and I never saw them in there. So I had opened it with me and my friend Brian. We were both like, oh, what is that? Well, we didn't see anything. What was weird though is his dad said when I first moved in, there were these big meat hooks. And he goes, when I walked into the freezer, of course it was off. There was no electricity in the house. He went there in the daytime, and the meat hooks started clanging together. And he goes, dude, I got so scared I ran. His dad was a big guy. His dad ran out. He goes, all I could think of was Leatherface,
Yeah.
and like, and there's like meat hooks, Well, weird thing is, I found out that the guy who lived in that house, 2 of his ex-wives had disappeared. Both of them had apparently packed up and left him. One went to California. The other one went to like Minnesota or something, and they never saw her again. And nobody questioned. This was back in the 70s, to the early 80s. And so there's no internet. You're not looking up, whatever her name is and saying, oh, hey, where are you, Mrs. So-and-so? Because, you're not on Facebook anymore. Well, there was no Facebook. It wasn't anything.
She moved to Toronto.
Yeah, she moved away, and so there was this weird thing. I found that out later on when I started doing some research on it. So this guy had. So why did he have this walk-in freezer, right? Well, anyway, we were going to bed, and my friend Hunter loved it. Like he was like a year older than us, and he was the kind of I guess the bad guy. He was the bad one. He was always getting in trouble at school and stuff. And but he was very intelligent, And he said, I don't like these Teddy Ruxpins. He was playing with it, messing with it. And we were older. That was for younger kids. You know what I mean? His brother Mikey kind of inherited it, but he was terrified of it because it would go off in the middle of the night. So he put it back in Brian's room.
And Chucky came out one of those years later.
Yeah, you're right. So they were making they were like made from the doll. Yeah. So we were sitting there, and he goes, "Dude, can this thing do anything else? Can it record us or whatever?" And so I don't know if he had put like another cassette in there that it could play it or not. I can't remember exactly. But I just know we were laying there, and Hunter thought it would be cute to ask this Teddy Ruxpin, because it was going off at times, which was unusual. He said, he goes, who was in the freezer? All right?
Nope, don't even.
And so then we're laying there, and I'm covering up to go to sleep, and he had one of those beds that was like the like came out sideways, and then there was a bunk on top. And then he had another bed that was up against the wall that was a rollaway bed. So if you had like a sleepover, right? And then my other friend who was already passed out, he had gone to sleep in his little brother's room. So we're sitting there in there, and we're talking, and it goes off, and it says me. And so I thought it said meat, right? But then years later, I found out that this guy, 2 women that he had married had disappeared, had left him. And of course his dad had, when they bought the house, there was the thing with the meat hooks. He didn't tell me any other crazy stories or anything, but every time we would walk by that we would hear the clanging of those meat hooks, and there's no I mean, you open it up, it's just meat in there, you know, because his dad was a butcher. And so it was really weird. And his dad, like, he went to our church, and he was always like looked stressed out, you know, like he was stressed out, you know. And I remember one time my mom having them come over and they all prayed together. And I think it had something to do with that house. But like, I never had anything really weird happen to me in that house, other than the Teddy Ruxpin thing, you know. And it didn't sound like Teddy Ruxpin; it sounded like some other cassette or something playing, and it said "me," and so it could have been saying "me," like a person, you know, was saying "me." I was in the freezer, and like maybe it was. I mean, I'm just speculating. I'm totally going on a limb and speculating. But what if that was one of his ex-wives?
You remember those? Did they had a thing to where you can send off and give it your name and it would say your name, right?
I think so, yeah.
Isn't that what that was? So it's possible.
I thought it was like, I don't know on your timeline, Loki, but on my timeline, I don't remember the glowworm. Just like the Texas Instrument things with the weird, the speaking spell, and it would say crazy things. Like my cousins did that one time at Christmas time. We were playing with it because my aunt worked at Texas Instruments, and she had gotten us those speaking spells, and I had mine for about 2 days, and it said hell, hell, hell. And I'm not joking. It didn't say hello. It said hell, hell, hell. And so I took it and threw it against the wall, and I broke it. And my mom and dad just flipped out at me. They were like, why would you do that? And I was like, because it said hell. And they never believed me. They never believed what I'd said about it. And they're like, oh, you, and then the Teddy Ruxpin and all the weird stuff. And then my friend's mom, she took that Teddy Ruxpin and beat it with one of our Little League aluminum bats right in front of us, dude. Like, I mean, I'm not joking. It was like after a Pee Wee football. I was on a Pee Wee football team with him, and we went over there to eat pizza, and we had just won our last game, or whatever. So it was like a big deal. And his mother, like, everybody was complaining that they heard it. So a bunch of kids came running out. I was playing Nintendo or something, and so she just takes it outside and starts beating it.
What were you playing, Excite Bike?
Actually, you know what? It might have been. I think it was the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario, but remember the Mario Brothers? We used to have tournaments with that crap. But anyway, we're sitting there playing, and then she beat it with a bat. And I'll never forget that. I was a kid, and I was like, "What the heck? Why is Deborah beating this with a bat?" You know, I called her Aunt Deb. I didn't know her. I didn't know. You know, it's like we would call our elders like aunt or uncle, you know, whatever. And I was like, why is Aunt Deb like beating that with a bat? And my friend was like, that thing's possessed. Because we all went to a Christian school, so everybody was like, it's a demon, you know? And so, but there were other things that happened. Like we were told to gather up all of our rock and roll music, which I had very little of at that time. I was a little kid. So I took like Stand By Me. You know, the record?
All your Elvis records are gone?
Elvis, yeah, there you go. Like, who sings Stand By Me? What is that, like? Marvin Gaye, and then like who sings "Stand By Me"? And when it's dark, and then the land is what is it? Stand by me.
I think it's several people saying that, but
well, I mean, it's the original. But
yeah.
anyway, I threw that record into the fire because that's all I had to contribute, and I had that song "War." What is it good for? You know.
And you regretted it to this day.
Well, I mean, not really, because I didn't really know. I was just being told what to do by the church, so I went and I threw the stuff into the fire, and supposedly it made demonic sounds and. It was all, it just sounded like plastic popping to me. But they said the demons are coming out of it. And they claimed that they saw green stuff, and I didn't see any of that. I was just sitting there looking at it going like, well, that's a perfectly good waste of a record. But
Yeah.
Benny King, somebody just said, Bernard Fox, thank you, Benny King. So anyway, the whole thing was just like everything was, it was kind of cultish, I'm not going to lie. And it was like, oh, everything is a demon. Everything's a demon, you know. But it was weird though that what happened to me with that Teddy Ruxpin, and I always thought this is a weird thing. Like, how do you explain this? And there were some weird things that happened. You know, like at my friend's pool, we found out later on that a kid had drowned there, and that was because my friend Keith told me there was another kid that was he was about 3 or 4 years old. He goes, "Oh yeah, so and so drowned there when we were little," you know, blah blah blah. And I was like. And all this time, we kept thinking that something was touching us in the pool, like our legs and stuff. And his little sister had, this is my friend Tommy, she had jumped in the pool one time, and she was 5, and she could swim. We were all good swimmers. And I remember her name was like Alyssa or something, and she would never get back in the pool. And she kept saying the blue boy, the blue boy. because she said that when she jumped in the pool, this blue boy tried to grab her. Now, if a kid drowned, he could look like, and so she would say the blue boy, and she would point at the pool, and she would creep me out. Like I'd be walking toward the pool and having my, getting ready for summertime, having a good time. And here's this buzzkill little kid pointing at the pool, talking about the blue boy. And then you feel something touch your leg and, and you're like, whoa, because there was a deep end to it. We had a diving board and everything. And of course, nowadays they'd be like, oh, kids are in danger, especially if somebody drowned there. But it happened before I moved there. I moved there in like 84. So I never thought nothing of it. I got invited to go to sleepovers. I guess I wasn't like the coolest kid, but I wasn't like a dork, So I got invited to go to sleepovers and stuff like that. And we would swim and do stuff, and his mother would bring out cupcakes. She was a nurse. And it was cool. But I remember talking to her one time, and I was like, I felt like something touched my leg, and she just kind of goes, oh, okay, well, that's weird. And she would just kind of brush it over. Just kind of, but then years later, my friend tells me, oh, no, that's, that kid, he was in my class. He was 3 or 4 years older than us. And he was like, and he drowned when we were like 8 years old or something. So it would have been about 3 or 4 years before they bought that house. And it was about the same year that I came when they bought that house. And so the house had sat empty because when you go to show the house, people in that town, they know that there's a person that had drowned there.
Right.
The heck was that?
Fell in the bathtub.
Everybody all right? Wow. People falling around down there. But, it was crazy. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, am I going crazy? Are my friends going crazy? And I remember one other thing that happened. Do you remember that G.I. Joe? They had that hovercraft thing. But it didn't actually float in the water. Like it was, if you had one little piece off of it, it would sink. So I can't say this is totally paranormal, but it was really weird. It was kind of bobbing in the water and we were playing with it. And then it just kind of went whoosh under the water real fast. So that was weird. And then I heard all kinds of other stories over the years of one kid getting pulled under and being held under and almost drowning. And I remember his last name was the same as my last name, but he wasn't. We weren't related. And people were always like, "Oh, you're related to him," and I'm like, "No, we're not." But I just remember like him getting pulled under, and so it was some weird stuff that happened. And like I just chalk it up to as a kid. I don't feel like I was any different than any other kid, other than I had a few paranormal experiences, But it did tend to happen like at other places, other people's houses and stuff. And I do think that there was something to the whole Teddy Ruxpin thing. And there were many people who had claimed that they had problems with those Teddy Ruxpins and with the Furbies making noise and saying things and doing things or whatever. But anyway, that's all we were talking about. I'm just, we're rambling now, but
There's something disturbing about little kids dying in pools. Like,
so disturbing about little kids dying, period.
But in pools or, somewhere it's not like somebody killed them.
Yeah.
Something like that. So it's like, you don't know how he ended up there or her or whatever. It's kind of weird. It's like one of those weird things.
Well, because
water.
everybody's playing and having a good time, and then tragedy happens, and so the story was, and it was only confirmed by my friend, and I never did even look into it deeply. I kind of felt like I don't want to look into this because I think once you know 100% about something, then and it really freaks you out, man.
Even if you have a sliver of something, like you're on the case of something.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know, that also is scary too.
I think it's like it's kind of like to me if you don't know 100%, then there's always this little bit of deniability to yourself.
Oh yeah.
But once you know for sure, like once I found out, about a couple things about my old house, whatever, I was like, oh man, that's not. I don't want to know. I don't. At the time, I was like, I don't want to know. But, anyways, folks, do you have anything to say, Barton, before we get out of here?
No, thanks to everyone who came in and listened to us talk. And yeah, try to get out to the Jefferson Bigfoot conference this weekend and see us, buy some cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely, dude. And Loki, thanks for showing up, man.
Yeah, man.
It was
I
really
didn't know I was going to be on. I just came out.
He just came to hang out, man.
Yep.
And so, for everybody here at Paranormal Roundtable and PRT, we appreciate you tuning in. Everybody, We told some stories and we talked about all kinds of different stuff. And don't forget about Halloween. We're going to try to be here next Tuesday. So just try to make it back here next Tuesday, and we'll talk again. Unfortunately, my friend Barton will have to leave on Tuesday to get.
I'll be with you. I'll be watching from the house, man.
Yeah, and
I never miss a live stream.
Yeah, I think you're leaving Tuesday, early Tuesday, right? During
Yeah,
the day?
I think so. Yeah.
And so, definitely, I'm already sad about you leaving. You
Yeah,
haven't
me
left
too,
yet.
brother. Yeah,
It's
We
been
got
such a
to
good
that
time.
long to make sure he stays, though.
Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
make sure we got.
Yeah.
Nellie was talking last night. We dropped you off at the hotel, and she was like, "We got to figure out a way to make them stay." I was like what? Like misery? You know, like
Yeah, just
like it's for the best.
break our feet. Yeah.
She goes, "Well, we don't want to hurt them, so we'll just tie them up." And I was like,
We would stay down here with you guys if we could. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. We love it down here.
"It's fun. We're having a good
Yeah,
time."
having
But
a great time.
so, folks, thank you for tuning in. Barton in the studio and Logie showing up. That's a retreat, and Alec has helped us with the camera work, and we're moving forward. We're going to be doing some different stuff. Right, Alec? We're going to be moving. Yeah?
Yeah, Alex done a great
Lots
job.
of cool stuff we're going to be involved in doing, and it's going to take the production value up to a new level. We're working out the kinks, folks, but thank you for tuning in, and from everybody here at Paranormal Roundtable, good night.
Good night.
Good night.